All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is John Coppola, Chair of the P&Z, and we will call this meeting to order on April 20th, 2026 at 7 p.m. Welcome to the Reston Planning and Zoning Committee. The meeting is being held via Teams. Meeting is being recorded, and the video archive will be available on the Reston Planning and Zoning website. As we begin, please be reminded that all participants are expected to engage with civility and respect, both in the online chat and during public comments, so that we can foster a constructive and inclusive discussion. If citizens attending the meeting wish to make a comment or ask a question following the presentation by an applicant and discussion by the committee, they may raise their hand in the Teams app. The moderator will let me know and we'll unmute the citizen. And please identify yourself by name and address before making comments or asking a question. If you have any special communication requirements, these can be accommodated. So there are a couple of items on the agenda tonight. The AAFMAA by EYA presented by Andrew Painter and Isaac Newton Square. The applicants Pointe, also presented by Andrew Painter from Walsh Galucci. And those are the only two agenda items we have this evening. And we can have new business at the end if anyone chooses. So with that, Andrew, good evening. Please take it away.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good evening, everyone. Yes, you will have the pleasure of hearing from me on two applications tonight. So the first one is EYA's AFMA project. This is for a vote at 1850 Old Reston Avenue. Joining me this evening from EYA is Mika Gelfond-Gross and Jack McLaurin. We also have a couple of our design team members present with us, including Stephen Kroll, who is with VICA, Virginia. So VICA is our civil engineer, and Steve is the stormwater expert with VICA on this project. So what I'd like to do is share my screen. I'm going to reintroduce the project and kind of where we've been since our March meeting, and then show some images. And then Mika and me and Stephen can sort of walk through the status of some of the items and some of the resolution that we've been able to come to with staff.
Andrew, can I interrupt you? This is Tammy.
Please. Hey, Tammy.
On my list, I see that Stephen is listed as on hold. I want to be sure he can get into the meeting.
Well, I want to be sure he can get into the meeting too, because I need him
that's why
desperately.
I'm interrupting you rudely. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Let me, I don't know, Mika, if you want to text him real quick, just to make sure he can get in. But oh wait, here he is.
Oh, I think he's back.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you very much.
Thank
for
you,
flagging
Sam.
that. Okay, let me just share my screen here. Hopefully everyone can see this. And because this was introduced and we had an extensive discussion at the last meeting, I may kind of go through some of this. If there are questions from relatively quickly, if there's questions from members of the committee, do not hesitate to speak up or ask for clarification when I'm done with the overview. As we talked about last time, this is an approximately 5.19 acre site. It is located on the west side of Old Reston Avenue, north of the W&OD Trail, and east of Reston Parkway and the Stratford condominium, which surrounds us to the north and to the west. So if you're looking on the screen where it says aerial, that is President's Park, and the Hyatt is at Reston Town Center is just off screen, page left. The site, as we talked about before, has a brick wall on the northern section, and that brick wall continues and then converts into a cinder block wall as you come down Old Reston Avenue. The A. Smith Bowman House was constructed circa 1899. And then at the bottom of the property, you have the pond and the gazebo. And then you can also see the 1986 office buildings, which are between the pond and the gazebo and the Bowman House. And I'll also say too, as we've gone through this, this site is within the town center transit station area. And I think most of us who walk by this property or bike by it or drive by it know that even though this is in the TSA. It does not read as a TSA site. It has substantial topographic drop between the northern and southern property. There's vegetation surrounding the property, and it just reads as a more bucolic site. And so I would say as we've gone through this process with staff, this has been an interesting way that we thread the needle about the most appropriate development on the property, and prioritization for housing, for historic preservation, for utilities, and then how rigid we want to be in imposing the transit station area guidelines for roadways and sidewalks and the like. This is the property today. When you drive out there, you see the A. Smith Bowman site. You can see page left the 1986 office buildings. And this is at the northern end of the property. You can see the brick wall on the right-hand side of the screen. We talked last time about the comprehensive plan, that for a TSA site, this has markedly lower recommendations in terms of floor area ratio. It is a 0.64 FAR, which I think we can all agree recognizes the unique historic assets that are on the property. Office and residential use is appropriate and recommended under the comprehensive plan. And then the prior version of the comprehensive plan, as we talked about last time, really had robust discussions about the preservation of the Bowman House and the gazebo and the pond, and that new buildings should be sensitively sited in relation to those assets, particularly the Bowman House. We have carried forward those prior recommendations from the plan. And then on the right-hand side, you can see prior approvals. The one that encumbers the property today that we talked about last time is an approximately 145,000 square foot L-shaped office building. So what you see on the screen is what is permitted on the property today. This was at the behest of AFMA, the American Armed Forces Mutual Aid Association, that wanted to locate its permanent corporate headquarters on this site. And that was approved in 2019. And as we talked about last time, the need for office and AFMA's need for office has severely decreased. And so they no longer need this, and they identified EYA as a potential development partner, given EYA's strong portfolio of context-sensitive design and the ability to accommodate historic assets within their projects. We also talked last time about some of the concerns that were raised with this approval, namely the difference in the architecture and the severing off of the view shed between the manor house and the gazebo and the W&OD trail, which has historically been there. And so, again, you can see the Stratford high-rise rising in the background. There was substantial discussion with the Stratford condominium last time about tree preservation along the common property boundary, and we have continued those conversations this time around as well. What is proposed is are 57 townhomes, the majority of which are rear load townhomes. And we did have a discussion with P&Z last time about the pros and cons of rear load townhomes. We do have conventional front load townhomes adjacent to the Stratford condominium to enhance tree preservation. We have the preservation of the Bowman House. You can see the pond and the gazebo. And then some of the historic assets that we have talked about and just some of the key site characteristics. We have robust trail connections throughout the property, all over the place, around the property, inside the property, et cetera. We have a new public sidewalk, which we have worked on. I would say that one discussion, and we'll talk about that in a second, has consumed the majority of our time with how this site relates to Old Reston Avenue. We are proposing a off-site sidewalk connection between our northern property boundary and Stratford House Place, which is immediately north of the property. You can see that on page right of the screen. We have preserved the optionality for the house to remain as an office or as a private amenity clubhouse, or as reverting to a single family home. And I think we talked about last time that in all likelihood, it will be reverted to a single family home. These are the historic preservation proffers that we are carrying forward. They were heavily negotiated in 2019. This time around, Heritage Resources staff has sort of asked us to refine those, and so they are more robust. There are commitments for additional covenants. There are commitments for additional review and approval by the Architectural Review Board, and then disclosures to property owners and requirements by the HOA to maintain the gazebo and the brick wall. Some of the changes since March. It was brought up that we may want to take a look at breaking up one of the buildings, namely Building A, which is the southernmost building along Old Reston Avenue. At the time in March, we were just discussing that, but we have now done that. We've added that. So that's a change since March. We're going to talk in a second about the Old Reston Avenue frontage and the streetscape alternatives. And then at long last, we do have an agreement between with the county, both officials and staff. And so we have filed for what's known as a waiver from the Virginia Department of Transportation to implement that streetscape in what we're calling the baseline Old Reston Avenue scenario. So staff has asked us to file that just to get VDOT's confirmation. Usually we file that at time of site plan, but staff has asked us to advance that now, and we're happy to do that. We have also been discussing the WNOD trail connection, and we'll talk about that in a second. We'll talk about updates to stormwater management and where we are on that. We had a very extended conversation last time about that at P&Z. Mr. Penniman brought up a change to the EV charging station proffer or EV charging proffer. So we've updated that as well. And those are in the packet that was sent to you. We have additional disclosures to property owners about the maintenance of those historic assets that I just mentioned. We have additional commitments to install wayfinding signs on the WNOD trail to allow people to leave the WNOD trail, feel encouraged that they can come onto our publicly accessible sidewalks and trails and experience the historic assets on this property. We have further refined our publicly accessible open spaces to add additional hardscaping and seating moments. And then we have added our window wells in our lot typical in our plan set. And that is something that we identified from another project that was a comment, and it's taking on that project a whole interpretation process. So we're seeking to avoid that by front-end loading and building in the technology for the window wells this time around. These are the graphics of the property. As we talked about last time, this is from the WNOD trail if you were looking due north towards the Manor House, and you can see the gazebo being preserved on the right-hand side of the screen. We wanted to make sure that there was an established formality with the Manor House, that it remains the symbol of prominence on the property today and tomorrow. The architecture we talked about last time is something that EYA delivered. They did not just put it, take it off the shelf from another project, but they really looked at the muntins and the mullions, the fenestration, the size of the windows, and of course perhaps the most unique characteristic of the neighborhood is the color. We did talk about that last time. We like the white color, and I think some members of P&Z like that as well, but we are maintaining that. This is the northernmost entrance, and what you see here, again, is the full preservation in situ of the existing brick wall, and this was only made possible thanks to a recommendation by staff that the main horseshoe drive aisle be converted into a one-way configuration, which allowed us to then reduce the amount of asphalt, narrow the driveway to 16 feet. It also allows for a full sidewalk in front of the front-load townhomes on the right-hand side of the screen, and a new alley of trees on both sides of that drive aisle. This is coming down Old Reston Avenue. You can see the Manor House. We have the specimen trees sort of ghosted in, but it's sort of, we didn't want to put the trees up there, so you just think it's our attempt to just hide everything. We wanted you to see, with certain artistic license, of course, how the house would relate to Old Reston Avenue. This is coming down the common drive aisle that goes, the horseshoe drive aisle, the one-way configuration. And again, you can see the sidewalk on the right-hand side and on the left-hand side, and then the new row of trees that we've been able to wedge in front of the conventional townhomes. In this image where the pink tree is on the right or on the left-hand side, that's where the entrance to the Bowman House generally would be in the Rose Garden. So that's just off page left. And so now we get to 3 items just to provide an update. And I'm going to lean on Mika, once I sort of introduce it, just to add or elaborate on anything that I may have mentioned. So when we filed this application initially, we carried forward the same approach from the 2019 AFMA corporate headquarters office building approach, which was just to run down a 5-foot sidewalk and a 2-foot wide landscape amenity panel along Old Reston Avenue. That was deemed acceptable. 6 years ago. This time around, there has been a greater focus on how the project relates to Old Reston Avenue, which is a designated state scenic byway alongside Georgetown Pike and Clifton Road. And so after much discussion between staff, VDOT, Forestry Conservation, Commissioner Carter, we have developed the plan that is in front of you to add an additional row of trees as you come down Old Reston Avenue towards the southern side of the property. This was not fully baked, nor had really been developed in March. And in fact, there was a lot of back and forth with staff on this. And we have been saying from the beginning, we're fine constructing whichever one you guys want. Just tell us what you want. And so this is what we are filing the VDOT waiver to allow. But what it would basically be is a 6-foot wide sidewalk running the length of Old Reston Avenue. And then when you get down to that southern edge, we are able to move the new brick wall back just a little bit to create an additional area, a landscape amenity planning area, so that those trees can have sufficient area to grow. North of the break in the wall, which if you look at the bottom screen or the bottom image, the right-hand side where you see that wall, that's the original wall. We cannot do anything to change that wall. Staff will not allow us to move it, modify or whatever, and that's fine. But what it means is there's not as much planting area for a landscape amenity panel to run a row of trees in that area. What we are doing on the back side of the wall is a robust planting area, which aligns with the Reston specific streetscape, but should provide a substantial amount of vegetation. So as I mentioned, what's on the screen now is what we are filing a waiver to get VDOT's early approval with. Hopefully they give us their approval. However, we have also baked in an alternative. And this alternative, you look at the top of the screen, you can see the sidewalk in front of the row of townhomes, building A. And then if you look right at the very top of the screen, you can see the other row of townhomes where it also has a sidewalk. So our thought is if VDOT does not approve a waiver to construct the staff recommended streetscape here, what are we going to do at that point in time? Nobody wants to reopen this and relitigate this. And so what we've done is we've said, okay, no sidewalk along Old Reston Avenue on the outside of the wall. Instead, we will run the sidewalk on the inside of the wall by connecting those two sidewalks that are connecting those townhomes. And so we have provided that alternative in the event that VDOT does not approve what is on the screen here. Just again as a backstop to make sure there is at least some connection if VDOT doesn't approve what we're hoping that they will. This is what it looks like. This is what the alternative looks like. So what you're seeing on your screen here is, again, maintenance of the wall where it is, extension of the new wall. But you'll note that there's an entire row of trees and no sidewalk between the wall and Old Reston Avenue. Instead, we have connected those two lead sidewalks on the inside of the wall. And of course, this will all be under a public access easement. Staff would prefer us not to have this alternative. They would prefer us not to have the alternative because they want to run the sidewalk on the outside of the wall. And then they also have concerns about the stairs. Those are not ADA accessible stairs. We do have an ADA accessible path through the property, and we also have a sidewalk, an ADA accessible sidewalk on the opposite side of Old Reston Avenue. But we are showing these steps here, which will have handrails. But I would note that if we did not have this, the only way to get an ADA accessible sidewalk in this location would be to have about 120 feet of switchbacks. As I mentioned, we have filed a waiver with VDOT to approve this design. We are hopeful, and this should be approximately a 30-day process. If VDOT is able to approve this design in writing, then this alternative comes out. Now, when we've presented these alternatives, some people like the staff preferred option, and some people like the alternative because it provides additional trees. But I just want to let you know we have both in there. I think we're singing from the same sheet of music with staff that what is on the screen here is the preferred alternative, and that's what we're going for first. Mika, on this one item, what else is there to say?
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add is this is not a matter of, option A and option B. This is a matter of what happens if we can't get our desired plan through VDOT. We are aligned with staff and with their recommendation for the proposed streetscape. But we need to be realistic that delivering on this is not something that's entirely in our control. And therefore, we need to come up with a contingency plan. And that's what that alternate scenario is. So we have proffer language that supports that notion that this is the baseline. But we just, can't be caught upstream without a paddle if we're not able to make that happen, because ultimately it's not entirely our decision. Now, with that said, and as Andrew mentioned, pursuing the waiver upfront, which is earlier than we normally would, we're trying to show a good faith effort of delivering on this baseline proposal. But hopefully that will all come to pass before our hearings. But ultimately, once again, we'll be beholden to someone else's schedule. So that's just how we're thinking about it. But first and foremost, we're aligned, on what this baseline offering is. What's that?
All right. That is the first of 3 items that I wanted to mention and just flag. So we've kind of resolved this one issue, we think. The second issue, which and by the way, this is an image. If you're driving down Reston Avenue, I forgot to mention this. This is what that streetscape would presumably look like after 10 years worth of growth. And you can see the distillery building on the left-hand side of the building, left-hand side of the picture. And you can see our project on the right-hand side. So we think it's nice, lovely, beautiful. All right. The second option. So what happens when you get down to the bottom of the property? And just to go back, where we're talking about here, sorry to go back here, what we're talking about is where my cursor is, which is somewhere on the screen, right here, and hopefully you can see it. So we just got done talking about the section between the northern entrance and the southern entrance. So the question now is, how do you get people to the Washington and Old Dominion Trail safely and elegantly through the process or through the project? On the right-hand side of the screen is option 1. Option 1 would take you right along Old Reston Avenue. We would propose a bump out, a narrowing of Old Reston Avenue for just a brief moment, and then coming right back into the property and then ultimately onto the Nova Parks property, which you can see where my cursor is. This one has challenges, and we'll talk about those in just a second. VDOT would not allow us to just bump out all the way to the entrance and the signalized intersection at Old Reston Avenue. They according to them, it's just too narrow as it is, and they will not permit a bump out. The challenges with this one are that we have to route it through. If you see where this rectangular building is, that is a historic switching station. It's used by Nova Parks today as for storage, but there are a series of utilities through here. We have conducted a preliminary utility sweep, but we have great concerns about routing it through all those utilities, which we'll show you in just a second. So that's option 1. Option 2, and we have that in our proffers, and we are prioritizing that, and that is what staff wants us to prioritize. So we are aligned more or less on that. But we do have language in our proffers, which staff is not a fan of, that if it becomes too costly as far as underground utilities are concerned, and we'll show you how many utilities there are, that we would revert to option 2. Option 2 is on the right-hand side of the screen. Now, intuitively, when you're coming down Old Reston Avenue, sure, it just makes sense. Let's just continue the sidewalk all the way down Old Reston Avenue to the WNOD Trail. However, if option 1 does not work out, option 2 was actually given to us by staff, and we evaluated it, and we think it looks pretty good. What option 2 would do is route everybody through the gazebo pond area and then pop out kind of in the middle of our property in the area along the WNOD Trail where my cursor is. The benefits of this are we don't have the utilities, have to work the utilities. And then second of all, the entrance to the project right at the WNOD Trail would kind of align more or less with the muse that looks directly onto the A. Smith Bowman House. So there's more of a direct line of sight. Also, we kind of feel that with this project, it makes sense, to have a much more dignified, elegant kind of meandering through what today is off limits to the public. And this encourages people to come onto the property, experience the pond, and experience the gazebo. So again, option one on the right-hand side is our preferred option. However, if we cannot get the proper approvals from Nova Parks, or there are utilities that are too costly, then we will revert to option two. Staff is not a fan of option two. They really want us to go with option one, and that is what we said we would do. These are the utilities that we are talking about having to work through. So again, the historic switch building, there are a couple of electric faults, the mast arm for the pedestrian crossing of the WNOD trail. We also have to route through as well. And so this is just some of the utilities here. So Mika, do you want to elaborate just on this one item?
Barely. I think the sticking point for us are the utilities. Our utility sweep came back, and we have some indication that what's up on your screen right now is feasible, but in the absence of true final engineering and coordination with Nova Parks and with VDOT, we just don't know today where this path might go and what's feasible. And there's a significant amount of infrastructure here, not the least of which is a mast arm for the signalized crossing. And it's this sort of offsite work is something that can sink a project. And so it's just too great a risk for us. But as Andrew said, this, and similar to the old Reston streetscape, this is our baseline, right? Like we're going to work to make this happen, but we just need to be realistic about the downside scenario, which is why we have option two, which definitely is the alternative option. And I personally like a little bit better utilities aside, but we want to do right by staff's directive and pursue option one to the best of our ability.
What is interesting is that in both option one, or the option two for the WNOD trail connection and option two for the sidewalk connection, people seem to also like, so I don't know where this is going to go, but the bottom line is we're building in the technology for both, so we don't have to reopen this. And again, if one or both of these is selected under these things, I think it's fine. It works. It's elegant under both the WNOD trail connection and Old Reston Avenue. Okay. Last item is stormwater management. We talked about the new recommendations under the Reston Comprehensive Plan for how to treat projects. As we talked about last time, there are, the prior version of the Comprehensive Plan really had built-in flexibility, had not treated everything as quote unquote new development. And then also generally for purposes of the phosphorus removal for this project, did not apply to sites that were below a 1.0 FAR. All that has changed. There's been a removal of flexibility on these things. We've gone back and investigated some additional things. We've also had some discussion with planning commissioners too. We have made, and staff has noted that we've made strides to meet the intent of the comprehensive plan. We did look at Washington, D.C.'s concern or their regulations, because that was brought up last time as well. So we're here just to let you know that we're continuing to work on that. We have also had some discussion with commissioners about instead of spending additional money on the phosphorus removal, to look at alternatives such as upgrading the riparian plantings around the existing stormwater management pond to help with additional filtration and removal of phosphorus. So we're continuing to look at all of that. Not much else to report on this, I don't think, tonight, Mika, but we do have some updated graphics if you or Steve want to walk through them, or we can do that during question and answer, because it'll merit a bigger discussion.
I'd love to spin through just very high level, and Steve, to the extent that you want to jump in, or maybe I start us off high level and we can address any questions, because I know that there's a lot in this topic. But one thing that we took away from our last meeting with you all was we were telling you, this is our proposal, this is where we're at, and we're having a hard time meeting the comp plan recommendation. But what we didn't do is we didn't tell you the story of how we got here. And so I just want to take a brief moment and let you know where we've been and why we are where we are today. So on your screen now, you see the orange bar, which is the code requirement for the site. And you see that dotted line that goes across just sort of as a way to orient you. The dashed out bar it's a recommendation from the comp plan, which we're very seriously trying to meet. And then here on the right, these dark blue bars show the history of the submissions that we've made today. We made more than 3, but I'll sort of summarize the more recent ones at the end. So our first submission, we were at 129% of the code, which of course still didn't meet the Reston comp plan recommendation, as we're struggling to now. There were a lot of additional improvements that Steve and the VICA team in particular worked with SDID, and we'll get into those in a moment, in order to crawl up to ultimately on 163% of the code. And that's where we are now. We had a blip of a moment with SDID where we thought we could get even higher, which still did not meet the comp plan requirements, but ultimately, unfortunately, it was something that wasn't actually that impactful, even though if you were a little bit creative with your math, you could bump up some of the numbers a little bit. But so where we landed is where we are now, which is at 163% of the code, which is approximately 68% of the way toward the comp plan requirement. But and I should say, taking a step back even further, this is strictly for phosphorus removal. There are 2 other comp plan recommendations that exist as it relates to stormwater, which we meet or exceed. And Andrew, could you hop to the next
Certainly.
next slide here? Oh, so there you have it. You know, as it relates to a runoff volume and peak flow reduction, we have no problems with that. We're able to meet that on the site. Reducing the 2-year 24-hour peak runoff rate by at least 20% of the existing conditions. Similarly, not a problem with that. It's really just the phosphorus load reduction that we're talking about here. And I know we discussed this sort of at a high level last time. So we exceed the code and we made 2 out of 3 of the Reston comp plan recommendations. If you go to our next one, Andrew. So here are some of the improvements that we made throughout the process in coordination with staff. And then there was a question in the last meeting, which it was very apt of, well, what else are you doing, you know, in order to meet the intent of the comp plan? And we've been, you know, putting our heads together and maybe banging them against the wall a little bit too, trying to come up with other ideas that we can reach the comp plan recommendation either further, but for various reasons, you know, each of these items are not feasible. So from, you know, a high level, the improvements that we made throughout the process, you know, you can see above, and happy to go through these in a little bit more detail during our conversation. And then on the bottom below, it's items that are just not feasible either from a cost perspective or because they really don't have much of an impact when you factor the phosphorus removal decrease, or often both, that they're really expensive and also don't actually move the needle. And those are very challenging, or it's extremely challenging to enforce, or it puts an undue burden on the HOA and the individual townhome owners, things like that, that ultimately put these items in the below category. And again, happy to get into more detail on this during our conversation. And if you go to the next one, Andrew. So this, I can't recall. I think we might have showed you something similar to this. Maybe it looked a little bit different formatting wise last time, but just as a frame of reference, where do competitive properties, comparable properties, I should say, exist that are not in Reston but are in Fairfax? Those are 3 on the left. And how do we stack up? And that's the table on the right. So on the left, the dark green bar is the code requirement. The orange is the load reduction that was achieved for each of these 3 communities. And then the dashed bar is if they were subject to the Reston comp plan recommendations, then how would they stack up? These sites were not, because they're not in Reston, but just theoretically if they were. And as you can see that, they barely get, up that dashed bar. And on the right, our percent of phosphorus removal achieved on a percentage basis shows our project, AFMA, in the dark green, and the other projects in orange. How do we stack up to that on a percentage basis? And we're at 163%. Which is, we have a close second behind us at, just over 155%. It's 7,700 Leesburg Pike. But other than that, the others are sort of struggling, just as much as we are. So, I hope that answers some of the questions that were posed in the last meeting, and happy to dive into the details here and answer anything else that might be outstanding.
Yeah. All right. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that took a little bit longer than we expected, but we're happy to answer questions from P&Z members.
Sure. Thank you very much for all that information.
Sure.
All right. Looks like Amy's first.
Hi, really just kind of more of a comment. I mean, after seeing this from last month and changes, I appreciate your efforts in addressing as much as you could. And I mean, I walk by this area. I live in Reston Town Center. I walk by this area all the time. I'm very excited to see what it looks like. And I know you kind of have your preference, and you're going to look at the way things go in terms of the access to the OD trail. Personally, I actually like the second one, the going through the property as an entrance, just because there is technically a sidewalk on the other side of the street already that could get you to the trail if you wanted to go just straight in that direction. And so this kind of provides another unique way of going if you didn't want to take it in that direction from Old Reston Avenue. So again, I know that that's all just contingent on what approvals are going to come, but I kind of like the way that looked. I don't know if I would walk through the property if that type of entrance wasn't there, or if I would be less likely to just think I'm going to walk through someone's kind of enclosed subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's what I had. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And, just to remark about that too, that's been one of the consistent refrains we've heard from some quarters when we talk about routing a sidewalk on this side of Old Reston Avenue. And, how much additional impervious service do we want when you have the connection on the other side? Also, to your point too, if you're coming down Old Reston Avenue and you want to go to town center, I think most people would use the trail where my cursor is that routes the property rather than coming down and then going, to Dew Points West. So I think your point's a good one, and you're not the first person that has preferred the second option. So thank you.
Just a quick point on that too, to make it simpler, you might want to add signage if we were to go with option 2, sort of on both sides, just so people know how to navigate, per Amy's comment there.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll also say too, we did add in a proffer to provide a commitment to provide wayfinding signage on the WNOD trail to get people onto the property. So just wanted to mention that too.
Sure, thank you. Tammy.
Thank you. Fabulous presentation, Andrew and Mika. Regarding what you've just discussed about the extra trees and routing people on the interior sidewalk. I'm a pragmatist. I would not buy a property that has a major public sidewalk within feet of my front door. And the problem, not only with the ADA stair thing, is, and this also accrues to the plan that takes people up by the side of the gazebo. People drop trash all over the place. So I'm not a big fan of, although, public, yay, woo. Yeah, no, you bring the public into private living spaces and there's trash and there's loss of privacy. So for the marketability of your units that are on this interior sidewalk, if that were to become what happened, I think is very sad, and I would not personally recommend that. There are some other issues with your plan that concern me. Could you bring up the overall schematic of just the floor plan of the whole?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. One of the things that I'm curious about, and I would like John Carter, if he wants to comment, we used to provide anonymous WDUs and ADUs so that people from the outside couldn't tell which unit was which or which apartments was which. And we wanted those units, those subsidized units, blended in with everything else. And here we have a 14-foot wide units, which are obviously subsidized. Yay for the subsidized. Super important, thank you. But I would prefer, I'm just sensitive to that. Hey, you're in one of those units and we're in these other 24, 20, is it 24 and 20 and 14? Are that the three widths of your buildings?
Yeah, and the front loads are 27, but that's correct for the rear loads.
Okay, all right. So that's one issue I have, is the dignity of the people living in the subsidized units. The other is practical from the aspect of there are 3 buildings that cut off the alleyways that access the garages. And I can't see the numbers of the buildings, but they're offset and they cover the ends of the alleyways. And there are 2 on the left side and 1 on the right side, all adjacent to the Manor property. Can we please get rid of those 3 units so that the vision and the air and the whatever, I don't even know how you would get in the garages of these 3 units. We had sort of a wild discussion about this at the last time about, 4-point turns to get into these units. And, I'm just not a fan and would love to see those 3 units eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I read in the proffers, page 4, number 10, only 2% of your designs are universal. There's 57 units, and that means 1 is universal design. I would think you would have a much higher patronage on that if you could up that percentage significantly. Okay, let's see. Oh, if it's LEED, what level LEED are you talking about? Are we at silver, which is standard, which is fine? I'm just curious.
Yeah, if do you want us to respond to the comments, these other comments too, Tammy?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Yeah, and Jack, you might want to, or Miki, you might want to chime in, but yeah,
sure.
LEED, that would be silver, but we're probably not going to be pursuing LEED on this.
Yeah, it'll be most likely, Tammy, it will be Earthcraft,
Okay.
which has a comparable designation. Jack, I don't know if you want to speak on that in any more detail.
That's great. I just was curious. I had
Yes.
an unfortunate heard somebody who was supposed to know what they were talking about claiming that the county's standard was platinum. And I almost threw my shoe through the TV. It's like,
I would almost throw my
Not
shoe
yet.
through the TV.
if there's 3 buildings we've had in the
Yeah.
decade I've been on P&Z that are platinum, I'll eat my shirt.
Yeah.
So that was nuts. Okay, we don't have in the design, we discussed this a little bit last time. We don't have the 200-foot outdoor storage area or backyards. And so, especially on 14-foot wide units, to reducing the width that much doesn't give people a fighting chance of keeping their stuff. And people are not Barbie Ken plastic make-believe fantasy fiction leading those kind of lives. They have bikes and stuff that they have to store. So I'm very concerned about that. We talked about the street trees. Bless you. You've answered and you've done so much work, and I was concerned about the same street tree issue. I love the idea that you've come up with. Really credit your team for going above and beyond. Let's see. I don't know. I think I'll let somebody else go ahead if you want to answer some of those concerns about identifiable ADUs. That would be wonderful.
For sure. Tammy, I think I jotted down all of your items. Let me try going through it quick and happy to, continue talking here or additionally if
Sure.
we don't get to everything. So in terms of the interior only Reston streetscape alternative scenario, we discussed that internally as well. This notion of there being public sidewalk, in front of your front doors, but we got comfortable with it for a few reasons. One, the dimension for the front yards, and I don't have it off the top of my head. I recall that we looked back at it as a team, 6-7 feet, I believe. We feel that for an urban setting is appropriate, and we've done, comparable projects throughout the region that have very similar settings. And ultimately, we think that it's an amenity that someone is going to want to live here because of the connectivity, and understanding that is an asset to the property. In terms of trash and maintenance and and even safety, we're making sure and have worked with staff and coordinated that, yes, public access easement, but that is open from dawn to dusk or similar. And also as part of the urban rec program, there are trash cans that will be located at key locations throughout the site, and we have a property manager that will be all over it. So definitely, I hear your concern. It might not be for everyone, but we've had success, elsewhere in the region and in Fairfax with similar product, especially considering the walkability and proximity to Reston Town Center. About the ADUs and these 14 footers, a few things, and we spend a lot of time thinking about this. But one, and this one sort of dovetails also with your comment about the 200 foot outdoor space. It's in this market, these 14 footers may be ADUs, but in many other markets throughout the region, they are also just market rate units. It's actually the same floor plan itself. They are extremely livable. They're very efficient, but they're very smart with the space. There is room to store your bike. You still have a roof deck. And the notion of corridor and not wanting anything to stick out, that's very, very important to us as well. And if you see that oftentimes these units might be doubled up so that they're next to each other, that's actually, thanks to the genius of our architect, Jack McLaurin, there are ways that in the building facade, you actually can't necessarily discern that, this is your 14-foot stretch, right? There's ways that you can get around that, and that Jack has been employing for some time, in order to, not make it obvious to the eye from the viewer on the exterior where the demising walls actually exist, and being smart about that. So that's something we're very conscientious about, and I think is a very valid concern. The buildings on the ends of the alleys, we call those 2050s. They're serving a few purposes. One is some of them in particular control for grade, which, yes, you could put a fence there, but two, it's, the beauty of a rear loaded townhome is that when you're on the front side of it, it's, incredibly pedestrian friendly. It's lovely to walk around in. The thing about the rear load too is that on the backside, you're in an alley. And so what these do is essentially make it such that you're never just staring down, the barrel of an alley. And we find that, aesthetically, architecturally, from a land planning perspective, from a site planning perspective, it's actually a much more pleasant lived experience, and doesn't make it feel like, these alleys, that they fall away as a result. Did I get everything? Were there any other questions?
The topo is important.
Yes.
But Katie McLean brought up the same thing, brought it up, and her comment has stuck in my head for over a month. Unfortunately, she's absent tonight, but I think she's traveling. But, how the hell do you drive down this narrow alley and you have to back all the way out? I mean, there's no turnaround. If those units weren't there, you could have an opportunity to have a back in and come out.
Oh, so, I see it. Yeah. Jack, are you here? Can you speak to the maneuverability for the alleys? Because there's actually some very specific site planning tricks to make sure that we meet maneuverability requirements.
Yeah, thank you. Again, Jack McLaurin. There is an art and a science to how that works, and the adjacent unit is either a narrow tandem garage or it's one of the wider 24-foot units. And what that does is it gives extra width to the driveway for maneuverability. And is it perfect? No, but if it was a dead end, you would really have the same issues. You can't put a roundabout or a T turnaround on the end of that alley. And so whether you're in the long alley closer, we call it, and you're backing out, you would then use the driveway, the adjacent unit, and there's a little bit of extra dimension there to be able to do it. Steve Kroll and his team at VICA have perfected, turning movements that confirm that this works for us, because, we don't want to put people in a situation of having to back all the way out in there. So we feel it's something that it's a configuration we've built before, and we feel pretty comfortable with it.
So are you talking about that the turning vehicle would access the driveway apron to the garage?
That's correct. Yeah. You would back out of that unit and then kind of tuck into that guy's, he's got, I think, a 5-foot garage space. And remember, these alleys they're 22 feet in paving on the drive aisle, which is wider than normal. Normally they're in a 18 or 20-foot range. So that extra width on the alley section helps a little bit as well too. But then, yes, people get in there and you learn how to do it. If you're a homeowner, you learn how to do it. And
about not being a homeowner.
Understand.
Someplace, getting lost. Oh my God! Now how the hell do I get out of here?
Well, that person probably backs out. You're right, because he's not familiar
but
with
they'll
how to
only
do
do it once.
Exactly, and I'm
but I don't know. I mean, you're talking about a relatively few number of people that will do this. It's not like there's a proliferation of people pulling in, right, and doing this all the time.
You don't want people backing out at 1,000,000 miles an hour down past how many townhouse units? It's It's
Sure.
a safety issue as well.
Yeah,
But
let's hope it's not 1,000,000 miles an hour.
yeah, well, I get what you're saying, but you understand my concern, I hope.
I do. And just to speak, you didn't mention it, but trash, right? How does trash work? And we have our own trash companies. It's private trash service, and they have learned they will back into the alley, and then they will collect the trash on track days, and then they'll just drive right out. And sometimes they use smaller trucks. They won't use the big giant trucks that you might see on public streets.
Right.
So we use the same trash companies, and they've gotten pretty good at it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I may have another couple of things, but please go on.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you, Tammy.
And by the way, just to button up the Earthcraft, they got rid of their certification levels with the current version of Earthcraft. So it's, there used to be certified silver, gold, and platinum, but right now it's the only level that they have is a certification level. It's certified. So it's called a Earthcraft House program. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but they're very, very popular in Virginia and South.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Bill Penniman.
Hi, couple of things. One on the EV charging. I appreciate what you've done. I think that makes a lot of sense. One question is, are you going to be putting in 200 amp electric panels? That
At
seems
this
to be
point,
fairly standard.
well, at this point, it might be 400 because, going
Really?
back to the
Okay.
Miko, the one thing you didn't mention was the universal design, and the 2% is a minimum threshold. It is our plan for the majority of the homes to have elevators, and as you know, elevators must comply with Chapter 11 of the Building Code and the Fair Housing Act. So it is well beyond universal design. So if we sell only 2% elevators, we'd be very disappointed. We think right now elevators are so popular, so we think we're going to blow that out of the water. And we are, Mr. Penniman, in a world of 400 amp service right now with EV and elevators, and the EV really is the kicker to get it over, even though we're providing the rough end. We're trying to look at technologies to maybe use products like span panels, which can ultimately reduce the loads, but Dominion doesn't recognize that kind of thing the way they calculate the number of transformers they have on the site. But 200 is a minimum threshold, but we might end up being 400, and which is 200 amp panels, and now the new NEC code, I'm sorry I'm boring you, requires disconnects for each panel. So it's that's again some of the functional aspects of that alley and why we want to close the views into those alleys, because there's a lot of equipment back there now.
Okay, well, that sounds good because it appears to me to give ample room for people to install chargers at their own expense, but at least they'll be able to do it and charge their cars. So the conduit access to the connect the panel to an outlet is perfect for future expansion. And so I appreciate you're going that route.
Great.
Yeah.
On the issue of option 1, option 2 for pathway to the WNOD, I'm inclined towards option 1 because it's sort of simple and straightforward, except maybe it isn't because you have to deal with utilities, but on paper, at least, it looks easy. The other option, though, if it comes to that, I guess my only question on the other option is there an elevation gain to get from the sidewalk up to the WNOD, or is it relatively level?
That's a great question. From the gazebo area on our site to the WNOD, it's relatively level. The grade exists, if you can see, there's in 2 different configurations, depending on option 1 or 2, but if you can see, there's a staircase that goes from the crosswalk sort of on the top right of each of those plans. So the stair that's there, and a similar location, although diagonal for the option 1 connection. And the way that we are making up for that grade on the south side of your screen here is that the pathway that is going sort of up and down on your screen from the crosswalk or perhaps the sidewalk to the gazebo, that's actually an ADA compliant sloped sidewalk. And so that's how we're making up for the grade. So everything is down from a grade perspective. It's lower from a grade perspective, but aligned with the W and OD.
So it's at worst ADA inclination. If somebody's coming in, they're not going to have to do some, hike down like a mountain goat to get down.
No,
It's all
not
pretty
at all.
smooth. Okay.
Yes.
In that
yeah.
case, that would be a fine second choice. As to the expression of concerns about strangers walking through neighborhoods, I have never in my life lived in a neighborhood that didn't have strangers walking the sidewalks and community members walking the sidewalks, and it's wonderful. So I would not be at all concerned. I'd be more concerned if you gated the community and kept people out or discouraged them. So I appreciate what you're doing with the gazebo and any paths running through. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bill, just also, that's been one of the touchstone aspects of this, is to take a site which is an important historic site for Restonians, right? And right now there is no lawful way to have people come onto the property in a safe way, in an ADA accessible way too. But what this project is doing is providing a lot of porosity around the site, and we will have wayfinding signage to encourage people to come onto the property. And so, we're very proud of our approach on this, and I don't think you can go wrong with either one of these alternatives. And for this connection.
No, I think it'll be a nice addition to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Matt Stevenson.
Thank you. Actually, you're on the right slide. I wanted to talk a little bit about option 1 here and talk about the width that street would be narrowed to. Somebody just turned off the lights on me. I think I saw in one of your plans, it was going down to like 25 feet. Is that correct?
I think that's correct. I don't know, Steve, if you by chance have that dimension.
I'm just concerned. I mean, even
Yeah, 25. He's correct.
Even
a
one-way drive aisle in Fairfax County would be 16 feet on each side. Plus, this is a road, I drive it all the time, coming back from work. People are biking up and down this road in the street a lot. And I'm just worried that with 25 feet, which is, 12 and a half feet for each car, plus somebody biking through there, that's getting really, really tight. And for that reason, I actually much prefer option 2, keeping that road width, at its current condition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a very apt observation. It is ultimately bumping out the curb is contingent on VDOT approval. We have preliminary indication from them that they have the same issue that you do, Matt. And staff is aware of that. Ultimately at the end of the day, we wanted to execute on staff's vision for option 1 as they asked us to. And that's why this is here. And so while it is a conversation that we need to have with VDOT and ultimately subject to their approval, that could be the reason, that we end up with the alternate. And so it's really out of our hands at this point. Regardless of any of our personal preferences per se, we really just want to do right by by the staff to execute on the vision and the comp plan, and we'll do what we can to make that happen. But maybe option 1 just isn't feasible. But ultimately, that's not our decision.
And then the other, just since we're weighing the options here, I think for the other connection point farther along the street there, I think I prefer the connection that ties it in with the public sidewalk. I mean, if you look all around Reston, I mean, we have public trails and then we have private neighborhoods, and you use the word porosity. I liked what Bill said. I mean, I think you see people out walking all the time. I mean, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world that people, would be going to the WO&D trail and then, walking through your property and around your grounds. And, that's kind of what we have in Reston. I mean, we don't do gated communities. We have open communities and a lot of active, walking people out with their dogs and everything else. So, yeah, I mean, anywhere where we can sort of tie these new developments into the active sidewalks and trail networks, I think is overall a positive thing for our community here in Reston.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
agree.
Thank you, Matt. Mike Jennings.
Thanks. I'll be very quick. I don't have any detailed comments about layouts. Given that, especially you got things to work out with staff and VDOT and all that. I like. All I want to say is I like everything I see. I especially like the design of the townhomes with the white matching the house. I mean, we just don't often see that much attention to the design, and I'm glad we don't have another spreadsheet layout in the front of a bunch of townhomes. We don't need to see that. So I just wanted to say I think this is great, and appreciate your guys' work on this. That's it.
Thank you, Mike. We're
Thank
very
you
proud
very
of it too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Sue and/or David.
Yes, thank you for the details on the stormwater retention and phosphorus removal. That was appreciated. Regarding athletic fund contribution, we definitely would like to see that designated in Reston and not simply near Reston. I don't know if you can do that. The main comment that I have stems from a few members that mentioned last time about the buildings feeling a bit crowded, a little too intense, the units a bit tight. And I'd like to strongly agree with Tammy about the 3 end cap units. David and I drove through this site today just to get a feeling of what these units and 57 units would feel like and how they relate to the manor house. And I have to say, without these 3 end cap units, you would have much greater site connectivity. You would have more accessibility. You would have more opportunities for meandering. I know you spoke about that. I think all the residents would have a much better view of both the gardens and also the open grounds, especially as they relate to the manor house. And I realize this is a cost concern, but I just think that would dramatically improve the development. Otherwise, I really like it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we've tried to be very, very thoughtful as to where we go. And I think, especially with those alley blockers in particular, just recognizing again, it is a TSA, but unfortunately, I think the loss of 3 units would also jeopardize the financial feasibility of the project. But we've tried to design them to have high visibility architecture. We want people, I mean, as Jack mentioned, there's a lot of stuff going on in the alley as well that that people are walking by, don't want to look down the alley. And so we try to be thoughtful in our design of that. But Jack or Meek, I don't know if you want to elaborate any more on that.
Yeah, I think a point well taken, Sue. And I don't want to sell short the challenge of grade on the site, which we really haven't talked about here. And by God, I could talk about for far too long. So I'll keep it very brief. But for example, the buildings in the bottom left corner of the screen, in the absence of that end cap home per se, it would be basically a 10-foot retaining wall. So in terms of views that you would otherwise be getting from the alley, looking toward the home, really everyone would basically be looking at a wall and not being able to see, the home really to its fullest regardless. The other alleys they still have grade issues, not to the same extent. But ultimately, here being able to really concentrate the pedestrian movement versus the vehicular movement is why we've done what we've done. And in terms of the crowding of the buildings, and Andrew, just really spoke to this, but they actually used to be spread apart a little bit further, but but we got hammered with making sure that we were meeting some TSA requirements as it relates to sidewalk and landscape panel widths and whatnot, which I think are spectacular for the public realm, but as a result have sort of pinched us in some areas of the plan that otherwise would have had a little bit more breathing room.
Did staff have any problem with those 3 end cap?
No, we've worked through a lot with staff, and I don't, Andrew, I have no recollection of a specific comment on
No,
those units.
I will say that one of the discussion points that has come up a lot, actually, because it's in the TSA, they do not want to see alleys like anywhere. And so if we did not propose these, I would dare hazard a guess that they would ask them to be inserted as a more elegant design solution to having a retaining wall there. But no, so they did not object to this or raise an issue about it.
Okay.
I would also say too, just the crowding concern, the relative to the other, what's on the what's approved on the property today. Overall, the amount of space that's immediately adjacent to the Bowman House has increased relative to what we've got with the office building layout too, which but it's almost like comparing apples and oranges too, because the way people are experiencing the site and using the site and accessing the site is just totally different, from what's there today.
The other thing, it's sort of funny. We've been chatting obviously with a lot of people and with some commissioners as well, and some feedback we got was, well, why isn't there more density on this site?
Yeah.
and that I think is one of the biggest themes of this entire process, which has been, how do you design a site that is so unique in its location within the TSA and its proximity to Reston Town Center and Metro, but also that is incredibly historic and bucolic, and how do you find that balance? And that's something that we've given a lot of thought to, and that we've done our best with executing. And I think and I hope that we're on the same page, with staff to that extent. But there are just so many different ways that you can interpret various parts of the comp plan and other design guidelines of, how do we do right by the site when there are these two, conflicting, sometimes zero-sum requirements, given these, two really important priorities.
Okay.
Yeah, it can, and I just want to remind everybody of the topography here. Andrew, can you zoom in on the house?
Yeah.
A little bit more. So just remember, this is a house that sits up on a hill. So when we talk about crowding, if this was a flat site, that might be more accurate than where we are today. That the finished floor of the house is at an elevation of 430. Okay, the bottom of the stairs when you come off the porch to the left, the bottom of those stairs, and that's an existing component of the house that we felt very strong about keeping. So directly off the porch, down the stairs, that's at elevation 23. If you kept going all the way down, the curved sidewalk is at elevation 19 to 17. Well, I'm just in front of the house, so at the end of that muse, it's about an elevation 19 to 17. So that house sits well above everybody else, which I think is going to give the feeling of spatial relief. If it was a flat site, it might be, you're looking into the side of these homes potentially, but you're going to be really well above. So I just wanted to remind everybody about that. And that was something that led us to this plan. It was very intentional from a design standpoint, and pay homage to the house in the end.
Okay, thank you.
And my comment is, or comments are just about the affordable dwelling units. I take Tammy's comment about the 18-foot versus the others, and your comment about the frontal design of that kind of blurs that a little bit. I would frankly like to see this as a unique unit. This is a unique development, and I want to join the chorus of saying that this is, you know, I like the fact that you're echoing the color with the house and these new units, but I think it would be especially since this is affordable dwelling units where you're dealing with, I can't remember now what the new comp plan is, but like 80, 90, and 100% of AMI. It would be nice if you could get a few more ADUs in this and maybe make one or two of them maybe the 20-foot building as opposed to the 14.
Yeah,
Any
yeah,
answer to that?
yeah. I mean, we talked about that last time, and last time I think it was like, let's throw in a couple more WDUs to get a different level of affordability. And I think we talked about last time, we've got 7 ADUs in this project, which will be at lower levels of affordability, like 60% AMI. And Mika, I think you were running some of the numbers. These units will be selling for somewhere ish around, was it 275 to 290, which is pretty
Somewhere in that
remarkable.
range.
Yeah, pretty remarkable. Unfortunately, we simply don't have the financial ability to throw in, to designate additional WDUs or ADUs within the project without jeopardizing the financial feasibility of everything.
And I want to just one more feature of this home. You know, this is a about 1,500 square foot home, 2-car garage, 3 bedrooms, and 2.5 baths. But the other significant feature here that is frankly a financial hit to us is the roof terrace. You'll see many builders and developers cap this home at 3 stories, and they won't provide sprinkler systems because that's what the code allows them to do. And I didn't like that. And I lobbied our partners, let me build the loft, let me build the roof terrace and not have that missing tooth on that home, which makes it, you know, more distinguishable. And that's about a $70,000 to $90,000 hit to the pro forma to build that loft and roof terrace. So that's not insignificant, but it's just another way that we're trying to deal with how people want to live today and give them the same features that might be available to market rate homes. So I just want to make sure that was at least brought out. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that. That's good luck with this. This looks like a very nice RTC adjacent development.
Thank you. I think, I think when you compare it to other projects within the TSAs, the transit station areas along the Silver Line, this is going to be entirely unique.
Very true.
Okay. Thank you. Michelle.
Hi, forgive me, I had to step away briefly. Have you already covered if you where you are in discussions with Reston Association and anyone else?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we actually didn't cover that yet. So
No.
we met with Reston Association a couple of times, and we're continuing the discussions. Most of our focus, to be entirely honest with you, has been getting across the finish line here. But we've been engaged in our conversations with them and learning more about their offerings and membership structure. And unfortunately, I don't have much more to report for you besides that.
Okay. Have you spoken with anyone else also, or only Reston Association?
Only Reston Association.
Okay.
And in
and
fact,
what is
and in fact, we're going to be going before DRB tomorrow night,
That's
voluntarily
right.
for an
Yes.
informational item.
right, but that wouldn't necessarily involve any discussion of membership at that point, because that's not what DRB does.
No, I just
So-
wanted to let you know that's
Yeah.
what. But we have talked with Peter Lusk, Natalie Serio as well, and those discussions are ongoing.
And what is the proffer as far as that goes?
Yeah,
Is
the
it
proffer says
just to
that
have
we
a
will.
discussion?
Yeah, well, that we will negotiate in good faith to seek joinder of the project into either Reston Association or Town Center Association.
Okay. And then can you tell me also just the garden, who's responsible financially?
So that would be the HOA would be responsible for the garden.
Okay, and then the HOA is also covering the pond and the gazebo,
Correct.
right?
Correct. That's
And
correct.
the brick wall.
And the brick. What are you envisioning for monthly, fees for that?
We haven't gotten to the point in the process where we've truly budgeted it out. So I can't give you a number right now, but I can tell you that we've been in close discussions with both our sales team and also our property management consultants. And that, given the amenities that are on site, we have no concerns of offering an HOA fee that would be comparable with the market and appropriate for this sort of development.
What would be comparable with the market right now? I'm curious. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I'm not sure I know the answer to that right now either. It's still a little bit early for us in the process, but internally and with UIA's expertise, no one has raised the alarm bells of being able to support the development itself.
Okay. Okay. And then this is also, I should know this, but I don't remember, with the ADUs, are they paying the HOA fee?
They will be paying the HOA fee. That's correct.
Okay. 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 And then, the one thing that I'm just noticing, I can't even think where one might be close. Is there a playground in walking distance? Is there something for children? Because it's it's beautiful, if I didn't have little guys, but I'm just wondering what is there available, and have you thought about that?
Yeah, so we certainly have thought about it, and I can't speak to where the nearest playground is per se. But ultimately, given the historic nature of the site, and its proximity to the WNOD, and specifically the historic gazebo asset along the WNOD, we endeavored to provide open space that was a little bit more reflective of the history of the site. And we also think that that there will be a large portion of the buyer here that will be of a slightly older or perhaps empty nester demographic. And that also went into some of our site plan decision making as well.
Okay. All right. Let's see. It's funny to me to hear this, because for so many of us, in my generation and others younger, it's this strong desire to be able to have a family house and to have somewhere for kids. And that's where you think of why do you move to Fairfax County? It's for the school, among other things. And so it's a little shocking and sometimes disappointing to see what's being proposed, not addressing that need. And so I guess we'll just see if that pans out and we just get retirees who want to move here and not families. I do want to also just join the chorus, if I may. Having Reston be an open community that's walkable and sidewalks near your home is very much a part of Reston. So please, I hope you hear that strongly. All right, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Tammy, is your hand still up, or you'd want to talk again?
Yes, no, real brief. You answered the question I had. All the units are for sale, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
They're all 3-bedroom.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, starting at 3-bedroom, Tammy, there's an ability if you want to, as part of your customization, add an additional, 1 or 2 bedrooms, depending on the floor plan, then that's possible too. But they all start at a minimum of 3 bedrooms. That's correct.
Okay, great. And I just want to clarify, there is a huge difference between a gated place. I am never going to be in favor of gated, but the idea that people walking dogs that pee and poop all over your landscape and your sidewalk, and gangs of young kids walking around throwing trash should somehow be totally fine within 6 feet of my front door on a unit that I'm guessing is going to be in excess of $1 million. Is that price point probably accurate?
Sure. Yeah. I can't tell you what we've landed on
I mean,
yet,
you're
but
talking about elevators. So,
yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
so just, I want to make that real clear. Tammy
Mhm.
is not in favor of gated. Tammy is in favor of absolute common sense privacy for people buying units in such a rarefied environment. There are plenty, you can walk down the driveway of this place. You don't need to go down the freaking sidewalk 6 feet in front of their front doors with your dogs. And I don't know about Penniman and others. We have people up and down my streets, very rural, and those freaking dogs poop all over the place. So sometimes people pick up, a lot of times they don't. You know, we have very naturalistic stuff, so we don't get hysterical. But that's why we have naturalistic, because I don't want to be hysterical. So I just had to say that. That's my screed. Thank you so much, and thank you for all the work you've done on this.
Thank
Really,
you. I think
Thank
the
you.
public review process clearly made the project stronger, including the input we had from last month with PNC. So thank you very much, Tammy.
Thank you.
So I'm guessing, Andrew, she's not requesting a dog park.
We're gonna have a huge dog run.
Yeah. All right. Commissioner Carter, are you on the line?
I am.
Hello.
Let's see, just a couple things. Tammy asked about the 14-foot wide units. If you look at the plan, it looks, where are the 14-foot wide units? It looks like there are several locations, not just the upper sort of east side. Am I right?
Yeah. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've got
that's
the
correct.
plan here. Yeah, that's
They're
right.
they're sprinkled throughout.
They're
all
spread
of the
throughout,
road
yeah.
buildings, actually. Yeah, pretty evenly.
14 is narrow. That's kind of an EYA thing. If you look at some of the other if you let me lump in the end caps that if you might want to look at that, there's some there at Reston Station. That's kind of I don't think you're going to see this in other projects. We don't see this. So this is an EYA thing. A couple things that you might have forgotten was the additional money going to the Northern Virginia Park Authority to
Correct.
fix up the trail. It's not a lot of money, but it's something. There are off-site improvements that you perhaps didn't mention going to the east that'll connect up to Stratford House and future Stratford and up to Temporary Road. This is a scenic byway, and we have Ken Plum weighing in to make sure we can have the scenic highway. We really worked on that back and forth. The universal units, what is that 2%? It's not really 2%. That'll be an issue at the commission, so be careful of that. When you say they're not universal, that doesn't mean you don't have components of it that are universal for probably all of the units, actually. So I just be careful of that at the commission when we get there. But to get to see what this looks like, there's a new development that EYA did at Pimmet Run. There's a new one at Graham Road, and the new one in Reston is Reston Station. Might take a look at that if those end caps bother people. I fully understand why it's done this way, and I think the grade is a major part of that. Those high retaining walls. There's going to be a lot of grading associated with this, a lot of grading. So anyway, okay, and the 14-foot wide units are spread throughout. Some of them will be ADUs and some of them will be market rate units, right?
Correct.
So
Yes.
the 14-foot units in this particular property will all be ADUs, Commissioner. But in other projects throughout the region, they are market rate units. Here, though, in this particular project, they will exclusively be ADUs.
There are no 14-foot wide market units here.
Not at this project, no.
I see.
Sorry
Okay.
for the confusion. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I was thinking just overall. the sprinkling of it. Yeah, I did want to bring up something, Commissioner Carr, that you mentioned, the WNOD trail offsite improvements. So just to let everyone know, back in 2019, we had AFMA at the time did not want to have anybody that was not a part of their business coming onto the property. That was an issue for staff. It was an issue for P&Z at the time. What we ended up doing on AFMA's part was to agree to $20,000 worth of improvements to Nova Parks to be used for upgrades to the WNOD trail. This time around, even though we are meeting our publicly accessible on-site urban park framework requirement under the comprehensive plan, and even though we have additional open space to serve the residents and we have public access easements for all of our sidewalks crisscrossing the property, we have still kept the commitment to Nova Parks for upgrades to the WNOD trail, but we've upped it from $20,000 to $25,000. And due to concerns that were raised by P&Z, we actually made it very clear that it was to be along the portion of the WNOD trail located between American Dreamway and Reston Parkway. So I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, that's it for me. That's it for me.
Great, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner.
Any other P&Z comments, questions? Anyone in the community that would like to speak or ask a question? Mark, I'm not seeing any hands raised. Do you concur with that?
I don't see anyone, John.
Okay, thank you. Would someone like to put forth a motion?
I'll do it. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. I'd like to put forth a motion to approve the AAFMA. What are we calling this exactly? The redevelopment of the AAFMAA site. I would like to put forth a motion to approve that.
Second.
All right. Any further comments? All right. Please raise your hands through the chat. All in favor?
And John, that's 2 in favor for us.
Thank you. All right. Hold on, I'm trying to make sure I can see this correctly. It looks like we have 12 plus 1 is 13 in favor. And all right, let's take our hands down. Any opposed?
Sorry, John, I'm slow with my buttons. I'm trying to lower
Yeah, no. So it looks Tammy, are you opposed or just working on getting your hand down? Okay, no opposed. Any abstentions? Okay, so it looks like we had 13. Oh, that might be all we have tonight, isn't it, Jared? I think 13 is the number. So there you go. Unanimous approval. Congratulations.
I want to say thank you very much for this. This means a lot. It's going to be a spectacular project and you guys have played a part in it. So thank you.
Thank you. You all
did
a really great job.
Thank you for the time and input, and we really do value your attention on this and your support.
Great. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck at the rest of the meetings.
Thanks. We'll take it.
All right. All right. Land use application number 2, Isaac Newton Square, Tri-Pointe Development. Andrew, take it away for case number 2.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We are now switching. We are now going to Isaac Newton Square. This is an application by Tri-Pointe Homes, represented by Greg Ruff, who has joined us. We have several members of our team here as well, just to answer some questions. This is for information, and then we will be back hopefully next month for responses and for a vote. What I wanted to do, because some of you all have seen this before, we're gonna sort of take a step back as we always have. One of the hallmarks of this project has been to approach the development of this approximately 32-acre site methodically. and thoughtfully, not rushed whatsoever. And I'll say that with every step that we've taken along the way, the ownership has remained heavily involved in working with its contract purchasers. And so we have the same sort of team together. Peter Lawrence of Virginia is the owner. We have Frederick Rothmeyer from MRP Group that is sort of the development manager that works with the ownership. And then this time around, we have Tri Pointe Homes, which is the contract purchaser for 3 of the blocks. And the important thing with the thought about 3 of these blocks is that it's critical that when you put these together, along with block N2, which was approved just a couple of years ago, now you're going to have a full neighborhood, the first portion of this coming out of the ground, about 1/3 of the Isaac Newton Square property, all around the same time, rather than fits and starts here and there and disconnected sidewalks and the like. So with that, let me share my screen, and we're going to get started real quick. And while I'm doing that, let me introduce Frederick Rothmeyer again from MRP, just to sort of say a few words on behalf of ownership. So Fred, do you want to say a couple things?
Yeah, like Andrew said, this project has been in the making for many, many years. I think we started over a decade ago. Really planned this as open spaces first, quality, and then buildable blocks that were sort of the resultant of framing the open spaces. And then subsequently we did an FDP for the infrastructure, an FDP for N2, block N2, about 340 apartment units that will be developed by JLB, will be the development partner. And then we had these 3 blocks. And as Andrew said, it's critical in our mind to change the sort of suburban office development that we have there today into a livable community. And that livable community will have many open spaces included in the blocks, and they're all connected. So bringing these 4 blocks all to the market at the same time, we believe is critical, and will create a real quality of open space networks for not only the residents in the buildings, but also the surrounding community. And it will tee up future development. As Andrew said, 10 development blocks. 4 of these we hope to start end of this year, early next year. So we're excited working with Tri Pointe Homes, high quality builder. And the ownership currently, if you have been past the site, is developing all the utility and road infrastructure for phase 1, which is about a $60 million endeavor. So we anticipate providing that, or turning that infrastructure over to the buyers prior to year end, fall of this year. So again, we're excited to be here and presenting this project to you all.
Great. Thank you very much. Greg, do you want to just say a couple words too?
Sure.
From Tri Pointe's perspective, please.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Greg Ruff with Tri Pointe Homes. Just wanted to say, thanks for having us this evening, and we're excited about the opportunity to be a part of this project and redevelop this portion of Isaac Newton Square. This will be our second community in the last couple of years in the Reston area. We just finished our Lake Ann Townhomes project with 36 townhomes down by the Lake Ann Plaza, which went very well for us, and we're looking forward to the opportunity to build here as well. And I think this is probably the 3rd or 4th time we've come to see you about Isaac Newton, going back to 2022 when we originally got involved in the community. So it's nice to see you all again.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Time for the slideshow. So we're going to go ahead and do that if I can find out where the heck I put it. There it is. All right. Hopefully everyone can see the screen there. So just to back up, because again, we've done this several times before. It's good to know kind of where we've been. The last time we were in front of P&Z on this, where we talked about the history of it, was over a year ago. And so there's some new P&Z members, there's some old ones. I'm not going to go through in great detail, but the bottom line is Isaac Newton Square is approximately 32 acres. It's about 62% of what is known as Isaac Newton Square, and the ownership spent the better part of the decade consolidating those 32 acres. So you can see this is an aerial. This is a dated photo. Obviously, we keep using it. Maybe we need to update it, but you can see where the golf course is. You can see the mature willow oak frames around Isaac Newton Square, and then the large asphalt parking lot there. There was a series of applications that have been approved over time. In 2019, we received approval to convert the majority of this property into a new mixed use, predominantly residential neighborhood with 10 pedestrian-friendly development blocks, 2.8 million square feet of development, and up to 2,100 dwelling units. The comp plan calls for this site to be heavily residential, so about 88.4% of the project is residential. And the whole concept was to have this be a quieter, more leafy kind of neighborhood that will drive the demand for commercial uses, restaurant uses, and retail uses closer to Metro Rail, including at the bottom part of this project, which is next to the WNOD Trail, where we have programmed an athletic field, but again, to make that commercially viable. We have also engaged an arborist to monitor and maintain the willow oak trees on the property. This entire project, not the entire project, but I would say a majority of this project, the driving force behind that really was the willow oak trees and the comprehensive plans grid network on the site, which easily laid out onto the project, just given sort of the square nature of the project. But maintaining those willow trees was extremely important. And then in October of 2021, we came through for a final development plan for what we call our road and infrastructure project, which is what Fred was talking about, sort of tearing down the first phase, the northern blocks, and starting to set the new curb lines, where the streets are going to go, and then readying the individual pads for development and vertical construction. 2 years later, in October of 2023, we came forward for the first vertical construction, which is a multifamily building on Block N2. And now we are coming forward for blocks W2, N1, and N3, the townhouse blocks, which is what we're going through today. So again, here is an image of what was approved back in 2019. This is the illustrative showing the 10 pedestrian-friendly development blocks. We threw in a couple of other blocks that we don't have ownership of, namely kind of where my cursor is here. But this CDP really established the street grid and circulation, density uses, the major publicly accessible open spaces. And I would note that the major publicly accessible open spaces are in addition to individual open spaces that are within each development block. The CDP also set forth the envelopes and the building heights. There's a series of proffers, about 72 pages worth of proffers, and then also requirements for or recommendations for architecture and streetscape activation as well. So again, we came through a couple years ago for the multifamily building on Block N2, and now we're talking about blocks W2 and N1, which are townhouse blocks. And then you'll see block N3, which is right next to Wheelie Avenue. That was originally approved as a multifamily development block. And we have gone through, tried to market it. It is the smallest of all the blocks. And so what we are doing there is reducing the density on that block to provide what are known as back-to-back townhome units. The excess density from that block we will recapture elsewhere within the project in future phases. Here on the left-hand side is the activated corridor site plan, which shows around the blocks as you interact with public streets and open spaces, what type of activation are you going to have? Are you having stoops, Juliet balconies? Are you having direct openings? Where should you concentrate the lobbies? That sort of thing. On the right-hand side, we have stormwater and biofiltration areas. And I'll say for these northernmost blocks, this was all approved with the 2021 Public Infrastructure Plan for a joint communal stormwater system. It's very efficient for these northernmost blocks. And so as we tap into, or as we develop W2, N1, N2, and N3, we're tapping into that joint stormwater system. I'll also say, too, that when we looked at how we can move forward with the first phases of the project, we really focused on wanting to do so in a way that would establish Isaac Newton Square as a neighborhood. So not just one block here or one block there, but really have a catalyst set of blocks at the northern end to create a semblance of place. And we determined that we'd start at the northern end, which is the quietest of all the blocks, and then work our way down towards the W&OD trail. And you can see where the sports field is located there. That's where we have our highest density buildings on Isaac Newton Square South. So if you know where the One Life Fitness Center is, and those speed humps that you go through, that would eventually be converted into a relatively dense urban pedestrian focused main street with the sports field as the centerpiece of it. But right now what we're talking about is just along the northern edge. And we also wanted to focus on creating the Nature's Edge Park, which is one of our signature open spaces, delivering 4 of the blocks of the Willow Oak Park, and tying all those spaces together and having them come out of the ground together at the same time for this entire quadrant. So these, again, are sort of the main key open spaces on the property. So just zooming in just a little bit more, you can see the trail system that the conceptual development plan envisioned. You can see sort of the layout of everything. And then to Ms. Kimmel's comment, as far as a playground, we have in this first phase a playground that we are proposing to build up front as part of all of this, so that the rest of the project will be able to benefit as the project goes by. Wanted to also mention too, over on block N3 next to Wheelie Avenue, you'll see that the footprint of this building, again, this is a graphic illustrative, but it really comes all the way up to Wheelie Avenue. Where my cursor is, there are substantial below grade electric vaults that we have had to design around that weren't really explored all that much when we were laying out the conceptual development plan. And sometimes, as Fred has said, you can't build all the density to which you are entitled, at least on individual blocks. And so we have ratcheted back the footprint of block N3. We have created a new open space right along Wheelie Avenue that ties together the Willow Oak Park and Nature's Edge. So it creates one large circuit of open space, which we're pretty proud about. This is a image from the Road and Infrastructure FDP. Again, setting where Center Street and Isaac Newton Square East would go, where Isaac Newton Square North will go. And it's not where we've traditionally seen it. In some cases, we are bumping out the curb away from the willow oak trees to provide additional space for the critical root zones for those trees. But the purpose of this was to ready these 4 blocks for vertical construction. This is what I had mentioned, block N2, which was approved back in 2023 for apartments. This is a multifamily building. You can see the architecture on the right-hand side of the screen. We had a lot of good discussion with P&Z at that point in time, and we really wanted to select architecture that would be a little bit more timeless, but would also set forth the marker for what the rest of Isaac Newton Square would want to be. We'll talk about architecture in just a second, because some of the same design parameters that ownership directed us to look at last time, they have now directed TriPointe to borrow and build upon this. And so one of the other things too I'll note is the center part of Nature's Edge Park on the northern side of the page, where you see the sport court, and there is a dog park in there. That will be delivered with block N2, as well as a portion of Willow Oak Park. So now we're focused on this. And back in 2022, after searching for and interviewing developers who ownership thought would deliver the quality of the community that it expects, they selected TriPointe to focus on these 3 blocks, okay? W2, N1, and block N3. We held a pre-application 4 years ago. We met with you. We met with Supervisor Alcorn, Commissioner Carter, but market conditions coupled with labor costs really inhibited the timing and paused the efforts. We have now picked this back up. We are excited to get moving on the blocks. We have further refined the development and everything like that. And so this is really a joint development opportunity, again, where all 4 blocks will be in place at the same time. Let's go through some of the aspects here. As I mentioned, on the left-hand side, you have the block N2 multifamily building. And so you can see the architecture on the right-hand side. And staff has really challenged us to increase the number of high visibility exterior facades, to have some sort of vertical variegation between units, even in the alleys. And so what's being proposed on blocks W2 and N1. So on W2, we have 24 what are called back-to-back units, and we can talk about those back-to-back units. They're vertically separated rather than being horizontally separated like you might have in stacked townhomes. So they're narrower townhomes, but you divide them vertically rather than horizontally. So you don't have people living above you or below you. It's sort of just carving it vertically. So we have 24 of those, and we have 37 single-family attached townhomes. On block N1, which is at the northern side of the page, the top side of the page, that block they will have 38 back-to-back townhomes and 20 single-family or 20 townhomes. And then on block N3, that was originally approved for 180 units. We are proposing on this block 24 side-by-side townhomes. So that's the proposed development program. We talked about the architecture. And for some of the architectural inspiration, this is what we have looked to. You all probably know all of these projects and probably have your own impressions as to what you think about them. So we've looked at them though, and what is Reston architecture? What are some of the good examples of things that have worked well? What hasn't worked well? We've looked at floor step backs like you have at EYA's Reston Station. We have Washington Plaza, which of course is on the Virginia Landmarks Registry, and the National Trust as a good example of new town design. But those have large bays with large windows and balconies, activating those public-facing elevations and breaking up the building massing. We've looked at JBG's midline and what we think are thoughtfully detailed brick representing Reston architecture. We've looked at the Valley and Park project. We've looked at Reston Station just for variegation and exterior materials. And then we really liked Hickory Cluster, just the flat roofs and sort of the large glazing and things like that. I don't know, Greg, if you'd like to pause and just talk briefly about the back-to-back units. I will say that back-to-back units are relatively new in Fairfax County. They're an old product type, but they're relatively new here. And if you think back to where we were as a region about 25 years ago, stacked townhomes were relatively new then. They became wildly popular. But with back-to-back units, the good news is we can actually fit in 2 parking spaces per unit. So we do not need long driveways. That allows us to reduce the building footprint and impervious surface. Each are, no one's living above you. There are not as many stairs because some of you all know in the stacked townhomes, you've got to climb up what seems to be an endless number of stairs. We don't have that issue here. And then the size is about the same between the units. So that reflects a little bit in the sales price. So there's not as much of a premium for an upper unit because we don't have an upper unit here. And if some of you all have been to Old Town, just outside of Old Town in the Eisenhower Valley, Pointe has introduced this project or product at its Eisenhower Pointe community. But Greg, why don't I pause here and just leave it to you to talk about some of the things I may have missed on this.
I don't think you missed anything. I don't have much to add. I think you did a great job of explaining it. It's a 4-story townhouse, condominium townhouse unit. Like Andrew said, it's separated instead of 2 units on the bottom, 2 on the top, separated with it runs horizontally. It's actually 2 4-story townhomes joined at the rear with a party wall that runs vertically between the units. So you end up with a front-facing unit and a rear-facing unit. And it's a concept that's, like Andrew said, relatively new to Northern Virginia, but it's catching on. And we've had great success with it at our Eisenhower Pointe project in Alexandria. There's a website where you can take a virtual tour. We have a furnished model at that community. So if anyone's interested and wants to go take a tour, you can do that anytime, but it's selling very well, and we think it'll be really successful here in this location. And it's a good type of housing type in locations where you don't have a lot of room. It's good for urban infill type of locations. It's very space efficient because, like Andrew said, you can get the two-car garage spaces integral to the unit, and you don't need the long driveway. So we're really excited about it. We have 4 or 5 other communities in the DC metro area where we are currently proposing these back-to-back style townhomes. So we're excited to do them here as well. That's about all. I think. I guess one thing to mention is we did retain Rust Orling, which is an award-winning architecture firm in the area, to design the homes for Isaac Newton. And these images show where they drew their inspiration from for the designs for Isaac Newton, looking at other communities, old and new in the Reston area. And they've come up with designs, I think, that honor the architectural heritage of Reston and also create something new that's also going to be compatible with the multifamily building on N2. And we look forward to showing these designs to the DRB tomorrow night, and look forward to hearing your comments on them as well.
Right. I'm going to turn it over now to Will with land design to walk through the open space because the thing that has taken up the most amount of time on this project really has been the character and the quality of these open spaces. We worked hard to negotiate the preservation of these willow oak trees with staff and P&Z during the original approval. They are a signature component of this. As I think we may have talked about a year ago, there is some discord about whether or not it is worth it to continue preserving those willow oak trees. I want to let you know, and John Lytle is here with Urban. He is our certified arborist, but we are doing everything we possibly can to preserve those willow oaks and carry the preservation of those in these plans. There has been some suggestions that we get rid of the willow oaks, and that would allow on-street parking on the perimeter. We don't want that. We want to preserve these trees, and I think where we have come at the end of the day is at a very good spot with Fairfax County Planning Department staff and Park Authority staff in moving away the curbs as much as possible, the building envelopes as much as possible, and the trails and sidewalks away from that to allow the best possible chance to survive. One of the things that we did do in all of these prior plans, because we've been building upon them each time, is come up with tree replacement narratives and tree preservation narratives. And we continue to refine them with each application. They get better and better, but we are carrying forward that prior technology that we built into the prior plans. So in this case, again, take a look at the site when you sort of zoom out. What strikes us, and if you know Chuck Veach's book, Nature of Reston, the opening slide is a picture of Heron House, and you just see green. And the opening page, and the opening line is, living in nature is like living in a park. I don't think I have seen a townhouse project anywhere in Fairfax County where it has this amount of open space. And my hat's off to ownership for forcing the issue, for designing it the way it is. We're very proud of where we ended up. So I'm going to pause. Will, why don't you take it from here? I'm driving the slide and talk about our open space approach, please.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. And, thank you everyone for being here late at night. I know it's not always easy, but I think before we kind of jump into the overall open space and park design and reiterating what Andrew said of how this is a community within a park, instead of looking at it as many of us have been looking at it for months, is these 2 submissions with 2 blocks and a block on the east side. I think it's without saying how much collaboration with Russ Orling, with Urban, and with our client team, but as well as with staff, really hearing their comments and trying to be as collaborative through that design process to keep the notion of this community within a park as we try to fit these Lego pieces within these tight spaces, and just be cognizant of what the end goal is here to make sure we're creating spaces that really matter for any tenant that's going to be living here in the future. So you can get to the next slide, Andrew. Before we kind of dive into what the new plan is, this slide here kind of summarizes how we started looking at the previous CDP plan, and again, wanting to look at 4 blocks as a whole, because this is kind of the catalyst for Isaac Newton in a way of how this development can become that success, but then also understanding the logistics, the details that we start diving in with the team, and especially on that N3 block, that's going to be the new opportunity for us to start creating how we stitch both Nature's Edge and Willow Oak Park, which was mentioned before. And then what you see here is kind of a diagram of within these two spaces or these linear parks, there is a various amount of what we call park amenities or moments. And within these park moments, whether it be the materiality of the actual space or what you're sitting in, what you're underneath, you know, the feel of being underneath Willow Oak Park is going to be very different between the new and proposed moments on Nature's Edge. So understanding what was intended from the beginning and still keeping that as our goal as we move towards the next phase in this full development and in the 4 blocks as a whole. If you go to the next slide. And so with this slide, we kind of reiterate that again, right? Right now, what we're showing here is the plethora amount of moments. And of course, I'll start on page right and then kind of work my way through the community towards the the southwest of the community and the park spaces. Really reiterating the opportunity we have now on Wheelie Ave, as where we had it before, it was very, squished to have only circulation for anyone who would want to enjoy the 2 linear parks. So there was a small disconnect. But now with the new proposed N3 block, we dubbed what we're calling right now the Wayside Park, meaning, we have a little bit of space where we can bring people a little bit farther away to Wheelie Ave, create moments for anyone who's coming from the north or the south into the space, and start amenitizing, whether it be a bike repair shop or a few moments of seating that still provide that amenity for the community, but also for anyone who might be commuting or meeting one of their friends or family members here in this community, as well as being cognizant of how we start looking at the alleys and buffering and really thinking about the landscape, as well as how the native palette that we're moving forward with can help us shape some of these spaces. So as you move to the west, I think the big idea here is within the linear parks and within those moments, we are being anchored by these larger spaces that we'll get into more detail as we get into the enlargements on the next few slides. But on the north, we have that kind of spine as you go from the south to the north of the play basketball court and the dog run and a more built park amenity, as well as that playground and more family-friendly park amenity on the west side. And then starting to think about, as we move towards the southwest, creating little pockets and seating nodes that are advantageous of the topography and working with our civil team and really understanding how the reality of this site and the conditions are going to not only affect, the proposed landscape, the homes, but also the opportunities of maybe having vantage points where we don't know exactly what's going to be in the future development to the south of W2, for example, but we know we can create an opportunity, and hearing what staff had said to us to kind of help create more of a moment here instead of just an end cap, while we understand what in the future will be there as a future connection to the rest of the park. So if you go to the next slide, Andrew. This kind of reiterates what we started looking at and how we analyze the space at a more logistical level. And again, providing just as many, if not more, of these seating nooks or park amenities, and then starting to look at how the materiality starts stitching these spaces together, but also creates a more elevated look and a cohesiveness. And I think with this slide, we can kind of tie in Willow Oak Park in a more of course, aesthetic way, but I think it's the nuance of it being realistic and preserving it, because our team has always prided our design look on this as there is no Willow Oak Park without the Willow Oak. So making sure whether we can easily, feasibly have an elevated pedestrian pathway, well, as you see in W2, but then as you work through N1 and N3, the topo itself and those conditions and drainage kind of push us towards a more efficient and cognizant way of using more of a elevated pedestrian wood look that still keeps that materiality going through that park. And then of course, just keeping that same notion as you loop around the east side on the wayside, and then bringing us back all the way around Nature's Edge to the larger moments, as I mentioned before. Go to next plan. So I'll start talking a little bit more on the larger plans and the enlargements of each individual one, but still kind of tying into those main design points, as I said before, and what Andrew has stated before. Each block still, we wanted to pursue that goal of having a home within a park. So here, as you see on that number 1 on the southwest, I think that's where we start thinking about, again, the topo, creating this larger special moment where we might think about, signage to give ode to any history here, and then moving and meandering through the development, as well as thinking about on the center of these spaces having, that native landscape to kind of enhance the tighter spaces that still provide an amenity to the homeowners that will be living here, as well as on the east side, making sure the Willow Oak Park, this is where we really have the opportunity to propose and bring that elevated pedestrian pathway, and then again start thinking about lighting and that materiality of how we can enhance the Willow Oaks as well during evening hours as you're taking a stroll through the park and through the outwards of the actual block. Next. So these images start, portraying what we're trying to envision with those goals in mind, right? And just being cognizant. I think the slide number 3 in the middle on the right really starts showing us how Willow Oak Park really can start looking and making sure we're not proposing anything like art or anything on top of that. On the next few slides, we'll start showing that, but that was something that we wanted to coordinate with staff. I know art was something that was originally proposed in the whole entirety of Isaac Newton on this block specifically. So we wanted to move that where it's not only advantageous for people who are, maybe walking, running through the park, but making sure we're not impacting anything within Willow Oak Park itself. So next slide. We'll get into N1 where, this is one of the more bigger open space opportunities we had with the park, of course. But then, as I was saying earlier, right now we're proposing a lot of different types of materiality, enhanced paving, but again, just keeping that cohesiveness of the seating elements, lighting elements, just to keep that character of this catalyst of Isaac Newton on the north end all cohesive. So it feels like it's this one loop park as opposed to 3 or 4 individual blocks. Then next. And then here we start looking at that character. And I think one of the stronger images is how that playground starts, being a porous and a front porch amenity for a lot of these units here, but also understanding that, the landscape itself can also provide a little bit of privacy for those units. So there is a little bit of separation. And then again, on Willow Oak on slide 3 and 4, just how do we start amenitizing and then kind of creating these seating nooks in between the homes where we have the opportunity to, but also being cognizant of being farther away from the actual root systems and working through those details with the team to making sure that these are feasible amenities as well. And then lastly, I think the new one that we are excited about because of that new layout and this new wayside park as we've been calling it. And again, I think Andrew stated it earlier, but there are logistical things that we didn't really think about earlier on in the CDP process. But now that we understand, this electrical vault, all these, realistic constraints of being on Wheelie Ave and being cognizant of that. So starting to think about how that landscape buffer and all these easements that are being kind of interwoven over each other can still provide an opportunity where we have a good buffer from that Wheelie Ave. So the people and the energy of whoever is meandering from Willow Oak or from Nature's Edge can find their ways through the Wayside Park, and then still creating more passive amenities here right in front of the units themselves, but still, again, the materiality is kind of bringing that character throughout the whole community. And then again, starting to think about on the north side of Nature's Edge entrance, of how that can open up, and then working with staff of, opportunities of making sure we are thinking about future connections towards the north or towards the south. So making sure we're not proposing anything that might deter that in the future. And the next slide. So this kind of brings a little bit more of that character and just the vision of what we want to get to with the Wayside Park. First slide, number one, starts thinking about, maybe small signage to help guide people who are maybe just meandering from the north or from the south and understanding, yeah, this is an open linear park. Having maybe some information on what the history was here, and then a little bit of a guide of like what it can be offered, so they understand, there's basketball, there's a playground if you want to go there, and it still connects back to the community of Isaac Newton as a whole. And then some of these other images are starting to kind of allude to how the character of the native palette that we're proposing can also start buffering the actual units there, the screening wall to make sure we're sensitive of the alley, and then again, just making sure we have enough seating moments for whoever is wanting to enjoy the park. So lastly, I think just in conclusion, we want to make sure that as we work through the design process and working with staff and with you guys hearing what your thoughts are, making sure that, the end goal here is just like Andrew said, having that community with the park, being home and being able to say that we are living in a very unique space within Reston that's new, and it provides a good, green amenity as opposed to a lot of newer developments that's kind of hard to achieve that goal, and making sure that the details isn't lost, as well as we are preserving willow oak, and then as well as we're proposing the new Nature's Edge on the north side.
All right. Thank you, Will. These are some of the images looking through the Muse in block W2. Just sort of go through these. And again, these are illustrative images just to give sort of the character of it. Here's the block N1 Muse. And you can sort of see the plantings and the sunlight and that sort of thing. This is looking due west. We borrowed some inspiration from a couple of projects we liked. Faraday Park was one of them. And just like the width, the dimensions of it, and it's not a huge space, but it can be very meaningful if you design it correctly. These are some of the images looking north towards Nature's Edge Park. And then, you might see where the woman is standing, the aperture between, the dimension between these two blocks, W2 and N1. When we started off, it was narrow. Now it's gotten wider, thanks to staff. And so people will be able to more intuitively and easily see the playground and the open space and the views west towards Hidden Creek, which is a very positive thing, an attribute to the project. These are some of the things that Will had talked about. We worked extensively with staff on how far away the sidewalk is from the Willow Oaks. We originally had it closer. We've moved it back. We provided additional mulching for protection of the roots. This accommodates drainage and the natural slope of the land, which is something that the CDP had not done, and something we hadn't considered either, but we worked with staff on that. And then you can see in the upper right-hand side, again, the views looking west. So that's where the playground is that Will had mentioned, and that's headed towards Hidden Creek golf course. And then this is looking from block W2 into that same space, and the trees in the far background are Hidden Creek. But you can see the playground and areas. These will all be open to the public. And this is looking from the other direction, as though you were at Nature's Edge, near where the Hidden Creek golf course is, looking now due east at the playground area and sort of this main open space area. And this is the entrance to the W2 alley area. I will say that we have looked at some of the alleys that work well and don't work well, and whether they have space for the trash bins and all this other stuff, or they're just, there's HVAC units and all sorts of things. We're trying to follow best practices in that. And then we have some of the elevated pedestrian pathways in certain areas to protect critical root zones and mulch. And then this is that Wayside Park area that's along Wheelie Avenue. And we originally had a much more hardscaping seating area, that sort of thing. Staff really challenged us to reduce the amount of seeding and in favor of just open biophilic plantings and lawn area, that sort of thing. But again, we think that this Wayside Avenue or Wayside Parklet ties the Nature's Edge space and the Willow Oak Park space together. And it's an area that we never contemplated back in 2019. But with the move from a larger multifamily footprint to a much smaller back-to-back townhouse footprint, we're able to capture the space for new publicly accessible open space. And this is, again, kind of what it looks like. And you can see the entrance to Nature's Edge in the lower right-hand side of the screen. So I think that concludes our presentation. I appreciate everyone's indulgence. And Mr. Chairman, happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Andrew. Looks like Mike Jennings.
Yeah, hi. Andrew, talk to me more about, at the beginning of this, you made comments that seemed to suggest, well, we're doing everything we can with these trees and make sure, that nothing's going to happen. Who's doing what or saying what that is putting that in jeopardy? Because, or it seems like it, maybe I'm hearing something wrong, but because that was huge for us when we first started listening to this, was keeping all those trees along those roads. So just expand on that. I wasn't quite sure what you're saying.
Yeah, and John can speak to it as well. But some of the trees, I mean, these trees are now going on. They were planted in the late 1960s. So you can do the math and see the age. Most of the trees are in very good health. We have ensured their survivability to the extent that we possibly can. We've done some selective pruning and other types of things. But again, John can speak to the tree preservation measures. I think when the county looks at this, every time that we've come through for an FDPA, or if we're amending the proffers or anything like that, they've really challenged us to sort of justify why we don't have on-street parking on the north, on Isaac Newton Square North and Isaac Newton Square West. And wouldn't this be a great idea just to really think about, well, maybe we can do a redo and revisit this? Because if these trees are not going to survive, and I don't think I don't think any of us on our side think that's a foregone conclusion at all. We want to do everything we can to ensure their survivability. Wouldn't this be a great opportunity just to revisit those planning precepts and have another look at it and everything like that? We have consistently resisted doing that. And I went to a small college in Fredericksburg where there are a lot of trees, right? Most college campuses have trees. And if you walk around a college campus that I think is well maintained, you see a mixture of new vegetation and larger, older specimen trees. And things die. We all have life cycles. And the same thing is going to be true with these willow oaks. If there are trees that are dying or diseased, we have to replace them. And over time, all of them will be replaced. So some will be replaced at different points. But right now, we've got a really good, strong array of trees that we want to preserve. But John, I might turn it over to you, just if you want to talk about some of the measures that ownership has taken on this.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, Andrew, let me just, I'm not concerned about, I mean, I know you guys are doing everything you can to make sure the trees live. That's not my concern. My concern was who is saying, let's just rip them out and put more parking. So I've heard what I need to hear on that. I know you guys will save the trees, and I appreciate your resisting, because at least for me, that's what made one of the things that made this development as attractive as it was, is you're really trying to save trees in Reston. So just when you're talking to staff, and I bet I'm not the only one on this committee that feels the same way, that the P&Z in Reston is going to go ballistic if they convince you guys to pull out the trees. So we don't have to go any further on that.
Okay. Yeah. No, and I don't want to attribute it either, because I think word got back last time that we were throwing people under the bus, and I was like, I'd rather not do that this time. But the bottom line is, I think we've jumped the shark on that, and we've arrived at a very good place with staff on it as of right now, anyway.
Okay. And the only other comment I have is I do see some elements of my favorite spreadsheet facades on these places. And I understand that's the cool thing these days, but I would hope that there's enough articulation, and I know you showed the various architectures around Reston that have it, but they're best at knowing what sells. But I would, just like to not have it be and you showed articulation, but that's not a flat surface. It looks like an Excel spreadsheet with some colored lines in it. So that's all I got.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for that comment. Yeah, that staff really focused, I think, more than other projects, and I don't know why, but they really focused on the rear designs within the alleys. Greg, you might want to speak just a little bit to some of the rear articulation that we are doing this, and I'll bring up that slide.
Yeah, I mean, primarily it was just adding some color variety to the rear elevations to, I think the main comment from staff had to do with the back-to-backs, the rear elevations, and I think initially our elevations just showed one color and it was a little monochromatic. Well, I think it was a good comment from them, and they asked for just some more variation in the colors to jazz things up a little, because the rear unit does face out in that direction to the homes on the other side of the alley. So I thought that was a good comment from staff. So we did add that color variety. And I think the rear elevations of the back-to-backs are very attractive in the starting case, just with all the glazing, all the glass that you've got across the back. So I think by adding that color, we really got them to a real nice place.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, thank you. Tammy.
Thank you. I want to say unequivocally, I have never seen the amount of detail on keeping trees that you have in this plan. It's incredible. And thank you for that. And I think that shows your motivation to keep them. Really appreciate that. Some other questions. Isaac Newton Square streets, in one of the comments that your staff made, you talked about public streets. Those are private streets right now. Are you planning to keep them private?
So this was something that was very important to us during the 2019. So everyone can see the grid here. These are going to be under a public access easement, but they will be privately maintained. We did not want to turn these over to VDOT for maintenance. We really felt strongly that ownership felt strongly that from a maintenance perspective, we could do a better job. No offense to VDOT, than giving them to the county for VDOT maintenance. So they will be, yeah. So anyway.
Okay, that's excellent. I thought that was going to be your answer. Are these dwelling units rental or for sale or a combination thereof?
Greg, you might want to speak to this, but they will be for sale units.
Mm-hmm. Yep, correct.
So the multifamily is apartments. That's rental, right? That already approved block?
That's correct. 345 units in that block will be rental.
Okay, but the other 3 that we're dealing with tonight are for sale.
That's correct.
Perfect. Okay, and can you give me a breakdown of numbers of bedrooms per unit?
Yeah, so Greg, you might want to speak to this, but I think they'll be having a minimum of 3 bedrooms per unit.
That's correct. That's correct. Just like you heard with the previous application, it's, standard 3 bedrooms, but with an optional 4th bedroom on all the townhome units. The back-to-backs would be standard 3 bedroom units. But again, the 20-foot townhomes would have an optional 4th bedroom on the top floor.
Okay. Super.
With a walkout terrace. Yep.
All right. I like the idea that on the, I don't know what number, the top, the northwest project, that's a one-way drive.
That's
that
correct.
makes perfect sense to me. And I should know on the bottom west, is that also one-way?
That I don't think that is not flagged as a one-way street.
Okay.
Will not be signed as such, but
yeah. Okay. I didn't see it as one way,
Mhm.
but I'm questioning that because the streets look about the same width, and with the number of units, concerned about that. Do you know in the center that's not in this project, does your owner control the adjacent and going east from the W2? Do we know, are those going to be multifamily? Are the outlines what's being planned there not ready to be built, but is that correct? Or could this be more townhouses?
No, that's correct. Fred, you may want to speak to this as well, but ownership does control all 3 of those blocks that are ghosted out. They're not a part of this application.
Correct.
But discussions are ongoing and they are approved for multifamily development. And what that looks like in the future, who knows? But Fred, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, we don't see those to be in townhouses. So that would be, multifamily buildings.
Okay, so are they going to be, do you think, and I know you can't say for now, podium with stick build above or taller than stick build allows?
Well, N2 is a wrap, has 2 floors of concrete and 5 floors of wood frame above it. Right. So the building south of N2 we envision being sort of akin to that. And then maybe we step down to the left and the right of that. We haven't really given that much thought how many story that wants to be or should be. Okay.
And thank you for that, because in trying to envision and make a decision on the appropriateness of what you are presenting and plus what's already been approved with the multifamily, it's incumbent on us to know how much density is going to be poured in here. It sounds okay. And you don't know on the blocks you don't control what those owners, they're a big number, a relatively big number of owners on the remaining Isaac Newton, aren't there? It's not just one other.
Peter Lawrence basically was asked by the milk producers to buy them out of their building. So they own that building. Then you have One Life, which are Chugged Ahmed. They, in prior years, have sort of envisioned selling it. Ownership has been talking to them, and if they are interested in selling, I'm sure that the ownership, Peter Lawrence Company, would take a hard look and run at it.
Okay.
And then you have the condominium building to the west of that, just south of W2, and one of the owners where the daycare center was asked Peter Lawrence if they would buy them out, which they did. So 1/3 of the condominium building is now owned by Peter Lawrence as well.
Okay. So our hope as a P&Z committee member is that there will be continuity with the whole square. And it sounds like that's the goal also of your team. So that's reassuring. And I thank you for that. On this very slide, excellent that you have it up. At the top of the slide, north of N2 and 3 is a little bit of section of brown sidewalk with an overlook. That's a boardwalk, is it not, for topo reasons?
Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, before, when we looked into this, it sort of was a boardwalk. It was over the ravine. And since N3 really in footprint has shrunk,
right,
and the aperture for Nature's Edge has grown meaningfully, we thought it would be much better to have it at grade, so we would be able to pull it out of from over the ravine. So this whole sort of Costa Rican edge condition didn't really have to occur. So I think we all feel really good about how this thing is landing now. It's much more inviting in terms of its aperture and the way you enter into it.
So going back to that other slide, the previous slide, please. that you had up. So we're getting rid of the brown sidewalk to the north, but all along the Willow Oak Park, that's a boardwalk, is it not, to keep the people off the routes? Or have you moved it close enough to the building that that is no longer a boardwalk? I think I saw a couple pictures and I couldn't decide which was the most recent.
Yeah, I'll let Will explain it so they can go into
Yeah.
detail. But they were pulled away from the trees, so.
Yes, okay, because I saw the big mulch bed in one of your photos.
Yep.
The other issue is going toward the playground, we have this brown L. Is that a plaza deck or what is that?
Do you mean right here where my cursor
Yes,
is?
exactly.
Yeah. We just, Will, you want to explain that? I'll bring up the illustrative.
Yeah, Tim, to answer your previous question, yeah, it's basically still elevated, and yes, it would be the same material as that W2 pedestrian pathway, and
Perfect.
just being cognizant as well. Yep,
Yeah,
keeping it
that's
cohesive.
all I needed to know. Okay, going back to the previous slide that shows your 3 blocks that you're dealing with, or any slide. You show 7, I think it's 7 parking spaces for block N3 along Isaac Newton Square North, but adjacent to the N2 heavily populated apartment building. That's a joke. How are you going to hold surface parking for N3 when you have hundreds of people accessing N2 and living there, and guests and service people? How are you going to hold the designated parking spaces? And that also accrues to the other blocks that have reserved parking on N, maybe for N1, but along Isaac Newton Square North. I just don't see that as even being possible with the pressure and to park somewhere.
Chris Myers, you may want to speak to this, but we are not seeking a parking reduction with this application. We are providing all the parking. Again, the good news is for block N3, unlike the prior plan when we were before you in 2022, when this was a stacked townhouse project, every project or every stacked townhouse had 1 parking space per unit designated to it. Now we have 2 parking spaces per unit, which is good. By moving to this. And one other thing too, just to highlight, on block N3, we no longer need the long lead driveways that we had under the stacked townhomes, which we've been able to capture about 40% of the building envelope of that. So we've really been able to shrink the building envelope for block N3 remarkably. The entrance to the parking spaces for the block N2 multifamily building is on Center Street. And then we have designated parking on Isaac Newton Square North and Isaac Newton Square West for visitor parking for all these blocks. But Chris Myers, do you want to speak to any of this at all?
Yeah, real quickly. Thanks, Andrew. Again, it's Chris Myers with Urban. As Andrew said, the parking spaces that are on Isaac Newton are really allocated to these different blocks,
Right.
but they're not being double counted for anything on N2. So what we've done is we've made sure that as each application has come in, N2 being the first site plan that's actually processing, that none of those spaces are really double counted. Staff has actually asked that question several times.
I'm not talking about double counted. I'm talking about human nature, and here's a parking space, and I need to go somewhere in Isaac Newton Square, and I'm going to use one of them. And where are the people for guests and service people for N3 going to go? I'm not talking about double counting anything. I'm talking about human nature and how do you reserve those spaces, because there is 0 service or guest parking for N3. The only block here that you do have a few spots is N1.
Tammy, the spaces on the streets will be visitor spaces. And the people living in the N2 block will park in the block. The ownership of N2 does not want to have their renters just park anywhere. So
I'm not talking about the renters. And hello, in this economy, you're supposed to have 2 people in a unit. Hello, there can be 4 people in 4 cars. So we all know this. We have friends who live in townhouses, and we know that clusters have this problem all the time. This is not new. So anyway, that's just a point I want to make, that that's a real problem.
So Tammy, when we come before you next time, we'll have a good response for this.
Okay. And that's another question. Okay. How many are you planning to come back for more questions later? Because I can save some of these for later, but if you're coming back next time for a vote, I want to raise the hackles now.
Yeah, let's get it all out. Let's do it.
Okay.
That's what we're here for.
And obviously you, as I said, I compliment you hugely on the efforts you've made about the trees. If and when one dies, you're proposing a 3 caliper. Wow, that's really little. I don't know if you want to drag in a huge tree.
We proposed bigger, Tammy. The county will not allow us.
The county will not allow you to put a bigger caliper in?
Correct.
Is that really true? Wow.
Correct.
Yeah.
No,
sorry,
this is not permitted?
This is John, the arborist with Urban, and I've been working with FCON on this specifically. The longevity of a newly planted tree is best at 2 to 3 inches. Okay. So they want 3 inches. As soon as you go larger than 3, the survivability goes down, and that's because
thank you.
That's just because a tree gets used to its nursery, its original site.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for that information. Sure. That just seemed nuts. Okay. L17 bench types. Ooh, I'm not a fan of the metal benches with the sharp, I call them sleeves, whatever I want to say, armrests. Wow. Those, please get a design where they're curved and not so dangerous. And P.S. seniors do need arms on the benches. So kudos on the bench. I have no problem with them being contemporary to go, to blend in with your facades. But those sharp edges on the front, yikes, I can just see a lot of orthodontia problems there. Not thrilled with L18 on your lighting choice. And a question I have is, for the poles and the pedestrian lighting, are all of the, I would assume that I hope that all of the lighting that on blocks you control in the square would be the same?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we set some of these urban standards with the block N2 FDPA. Because that was the first time that we were really challenged to do.
Ownership has basically set these standards for the blocks. So both JLB and Pointe are following the standards selection, and we've been working with Oculus from the get-go on these plans in the open space, and they helped us sort of source the pointy armrest and the lamps that you don't like.
Yeah.
I'll tell Don Hoover that.
Yeah, they're dangerous and they get hot, those metal arms. So think about where
Okay.
They're not in the shade. Those arms are hot as hell. Okay, and we got the answer about for sale or rental. Okay, I'm gonna let somebody else have a crack at this while I look through the rest of my notes, of which I have pages. Thank you for now.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Sorry, I had to step away for a second. Tammy, I was expecting you to go longer.
Okay. I have one more question. I do have one more question. What is this? So, on 2 pages in both of your packets for the different blocks, you have a statement, hotel uses are considered residential use. We've never done that in P&Z. Hotel use is commercial. When was that change made?
What page are you on?
Let's see, CO2.
Oh, I think that they were counted, Fred. I think that they were counted from a units perspective, but it is a commercial use. It's taxed as commercial. It's
Yes.
considered commercial. Yeah.
Okay, good, because I thought I had lost my mind when
No.
the sentence is there. Hotels are considered residential use,
Well,
and I'm going, what?
Only for purposes of unit count within the project overall. Only it's specific to this project. When we count the total 2,100 units, we're counting the 180 units that were designated as hotel use for block M3. But from a land use perspective and everything else,
Okay.
you were correct.
This
It's commercial.
and that was just a tabulation that was copied over from the CDP.
Okay, thank you so much, because that blew my mind. Okay. They're on C22, unless this is special for fire trucks. I believe you're on page C22. Your one-way directions, I think, are mislabeled on the yellow arrows. Or is this for fire trucks? It's just a minor discrepancy, but I was like, wait a minute, it has it going the other way on another drawing. So
We'll take a look at that.
Yeah. It's not, it's not anything to call your mother about, but
well, I don't know if you got a fire engine coming,
and I get that I'm not a fan at all of tandem garages for the back-to-back, but I understand the need to have autos entering a garage at ground level, and there's no way to do it with the widths that you have. So actually the back-to-back units are fascinating, and one of the first times I've seen where stairwells don't follow up the same side of a building, and I'm like, oh, I like this. It's the design seems very pleasant. So thank you very much. I appreciate your indulgence.
Yeah, thank you very much,
Tammy. Bill Fetterman.
Hi, I'll just be very brief. When I looked at your cover memo and saw that N3, block N3 was going to be reduced in density by 87%, I was concerned. But I understand that you are planning to continue building multifamily on the other blocks at this stage, and are even planning to transfer the density elsewhere. And I raise this simply because this project and the density associated with it provides a huge amount of support for development around the Metro Center, and also hopefully use the transit station. And if your company's plans were to say, well, we're just going to go to townhouses because they're fast and cheap and easy to build, and we can unload them fast, then I would be very concerned. But from what you've said, you're still working towards multifamily for where it's currently set forth. So
yeah,
that's my only comment.
Yeah, no, and Fred, you can speak to this too. I mean, this is a 25, 30-year build out of a project. Sure. Again, and the reduction in density on block N3 has been a major focal point, or was a major focal point for staff earlier on in the process. And because they're looking at it too, right? I mean, now Fairfax County staff is really trying to. I mean, we all made an investment in Metro Rail. They really want to try to get housing supply near Metro. And it looks like when you look at this as a major de-densification of this project, but it's not. This project overall has baked in the ability to transfer density between the blocks as things ebb and flow, because we only got things approved at a conceptual level. Sure. And so now we are going through sharpening our pencils and actually applying buildings and final engineering and stormwater to individual development blocks. And as a developer, I can't imagine that Peter Lawrence Company, as the owner, wants to lose any of the units that it got entitled back in 2019. But in this particular case, just given the size of this particular block and the other utility issues that we have to work around, multifamily is not going to work on this block. So yes, you are correct on all points. We have thoroughly vetted this particular issue with staff. And I think we've gotten them now to agree that we're not just giving up and like dedensifying the heck out of the thing. But Fred, I don't know if you want to speak to this at all.
And another note is, in the CDP, originally we had N2 as 290 units. They will be built at 345 units. So, there's a good.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's helpful to hear. And I just wanted to make my ongoing concern known and appreciate the fact that you're going to move things around as needed to make it work right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, William Pegues.
Yes. As a master gardener and was looking at your mulch areas, I was very pleased to see that they are flat around all the trees, and that maybe you could actually do something to make sure that whoever comes in to do landscaping doesn't turn them into mulch volcanoes, as we call them. That's really all I have to say, because otherwise I think this is going pretty well.
Thank you.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Just a couple quick comments on my end, Andrew and team. Number one, I do think there's been some projects, and I've said this before, that have gotten approved with way too little landscaping, particularly along the right of ways. And when I look along Wheelie, the landscaping that I'm seeing there just doesn't look adequate. I definitely agree with and appreciate what you're doing with the willow oaks or willows, excuse me. And it just internally, there seems to be, you need to look at the landscaping too. It just seems a little too sparse for Reston. So in my opinion, I haven't counted the trees or anything like that, but it just doesn't look like a Reston planting plan to me.
When are you talking about specifically around which trees? The willow oak trees?
No, those are great. I'm talking about elsewhere.
Okay.
That's excellent. I'm just talking about along Wheelie. There's hardly any along Wheelie. That doesn't seem to be part of this particular block structure, but and if you look here on what you're showing there's just not a lot of trees. So I think you need to just look at that for when you come back to us.
Okay. Will, do you want to say anything about this at all, or just take the comment back?
No, I mean, for Wheelie specifically, I think one thing that at this scale is hard to see is the amount of easements and constraints we have here. It's kind of a puzzle piece, a jigsaw puzzle that is hard to even fit some of these trees. So that's one of the reasons for this area here to have less trees, especially on that Wheelie side. And then on the interior, we're trying to, take account of what we can't plant because of these constraints. So heard on the rest of the site, though, we could take a look and talk with the team internally.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then stormwater to Andrew. It's always a topic for us, and I certainly understand certain sites have restrictions that make it really tough to achieve the comp plan. Some harder than others, right? Townhomes, it's harder because you can't do green roofs and things like that. However, I would encourage the team to look very closely at that and to come to us with a really compelling reason what the site can achieve and why not. And as we get into the multifamily, I think we need to get much closer to the 1 inch requirements and things like that. So just, you don't need to answer right now, but I would just encourage you to be ready for a compelling argument there.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I think the good news on that is that ship has sailed in a positive direction. Chris, you can speak to it. Why don't we speak to it next time? But it's the joint stormwater approach for all 4 of these blocks together. So we don't have the same issue that we had, for example, on the prior project that was before you this evening. But we can speak to that next time.
Yeah, I'm prepared to speak to it tonight, but I think, Andrew, it's a good idea. Why don't we include it in the presentation next time and just proactively address it with you when we come back in a month or so.
Thank you. And you don't have to spend hours on it,
Sure.
talking about it, but at least tell us what you're doing.
Yep.
It looks like Tammy has her hand up again.
Sorry, one last question. This round, who pays in your scheme to pay for the very elaborate landscaping that you have in your, you know, in your on your pages? It's absolutely stunning. The Muse landscaping and around the playground and so on and so forth. And also, the property to the north is RA Common Ground. That will never change. It will always be mature forest naturalized. So that is a beautiful backdrop, and the topography drops off. And then you have the golf course, of course, to the west. So you really are sitting in the catbird seat for marketability of these units. But your presentation packets and photos have spectacular landscaping. That's a lot of expense and work. Who plants it and who maintains it?
So there will be a unified ownership association for all of it. And then Greg, are you thinking from an individual ownership perspective for these blocks at all, a sub-association, or is this going to all like the internal Muse and internal block plantings?
No, I'm envisioning. I think what'll happen is these 3 land bays that we're looking at tonight will have their own homeowners association, and that would be responsible for maintaining the landscaping once it's installed. The landscaping would be installed initially by TriPointe.
Okay, thanks. It is spectacular, and you know, I just am concerned that it doesn't get built, because I've driven by and glanced over at the clay moonscape that these blocks are right now. And I'm going, oh my God, how can we ever envision beauty and structures and, you know, stuff coming out of this that is not scary as hell? So congratulations on the imagination of whoever put together your visuals. It's really nice. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, and Tammy, it's actually a really good point that applies to other things too, including the roads and asphalt sidewalks. Can you please have like just another compelling story too about how you're going to deal with sort of the maintenance of these things and make sure that we don't forget an area? I know when you're trying to break these out, you have to break them out for various reasons. But I've seen it happen many times where there's a separation and whatever group is responsible says, well, we don't have enough budget for it. And meanwhile, the whole rest of the development, you know, can suffer because of that. And so I do think it's worth addressing that issue up front. Obviously, it's a problem for future us, but it's something we should address now.
Yeah, it's already set up. So everything within the block is the block responsibility. Everything outside, like the roads and Nature's Edge, Willow Oak, and the streets and the landscape in the streets, there's already a master HOA set up. So we're way deep into it, and we got all the T's crossed and I's dotted on it. So
awesome. Good to hear. Good to hear. Supervisor Carter.
Supervisor.
Commissioner Carter, excuse me.
That's never going to happen.
You got a promotion.
Scared the hell out of you, right, John?
I don't want that promotion. You know, I think it's nice to see a try anyway at a different unit type. I do like the potential of that. You call them back to back. I think you need a better name, but other than that, I think that'll be a nice addition. 2 things. So each block or each portion has its share of open space, right? So we're not waiting to the end to get this. Yes. And then my next question would be the ADUs and WDUs. How are they spread throughout these 4 blocks, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah, they are spread throughout the blocks. We have 19 workforce dwelling units throughout these blocks. We have 3 of them in block M3 and then 16 of them spread throughout block W2 and N1. Staff has asked us to spread them out. They are located in the back-to-back units. They are not in the townhomes, but Greg, you may want to speak to that.
Yeah, I think you said it right. On N3, we've got 3, and then they're dispersed between W2 and N1 pretty much equally. And it's yeah, like you said, the back-to-back unit about the same size, roughly the same size as the market rate unit, slightly smaller, but within the 10% required square footage. And no, I think they'll work really well.
And then a couple things for the group. You know, this tree comment. This is a never-ending issue. I'm not talking about the willow oaks. You were talking about Wheelie and some of these others. Do we have enough trees? As you could see from the EYA project that we saw first, this is a never-ending process. I would also say between this one and the previous, these are a little better projects than we might see elsewhere in Fairfax County, and some of the, I'm sure the Reston ones are fine, but these two projects are a cut above, I would say, at this point.
Thank
Good.
you.
And that's due to the P and Z committee, not
100%.
Yeah. Okay, that's enough for me.
We appreciate the compliment. Okay, well, thank you, Commissioner Carter. Any folks in the audience from the public want to speak or have questions? I don't see any hands up. Mark, anything I'm missing?
I don't see any hands.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, I don't think this is just informational, so we're not looking for a vote. So I guess that'll wrap it up. Thank you, Andrew, and everyone else for your presentation and thoughtful communication here.
Yeah, our pleasure. And I think I'm going to go get something to eat or drink or something like that. But it's been good seeing everybody. So I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to drink, but we'll see everybody. I think hopefully next month for a vote and have some answers to some of the questions that were posed tonight. So thank you very much for everyone's indulgence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, any other business before the P&Z? Sammy, yeah.
Are we going to discuss filling the 2 slots we have open?
Yes. We were going to have I think last time we had talked about folks thinking about who wanted to join the committee. We can certainly talk about that now if you'd like.
Yeah, I think so. I think it would be, we can see, at least I can see, this, as John commented, John Carter, the sophistication of these 2 projects that came in has jumped up. The weight of the plans alone and the time necessary to go through and actually look at them. People that aren't familiar or aren't architects and don't have the grace of knowing, aren't civil engineers, it's a lot to learn. And I think it would behoove us to select replacements so that those people can come on board and be, start getting acclimated. And whether they come on as, we lost 1 associate and 1 permanent member.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. And I know some people have talked about maybe getting off at some point. So, I think we need to constantly be vigilant about thinking about new members. So totally agree, Tammy. So I guess, is there anyone that would like to volunteer to be on that committee? All right, Tammy. Anyone else?
Couple people aren't here. Katie McLean and Lynn, I don't know. They both had Lynn had an emergency and Katie, I think, is traveling, but,
Sure.
you know,
So William Pegues, I see your hand up. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yep.
I'm happy to jump in with you all to
That-
join stuff when I can.
good to get it,
Maybe
you know, get it organized and collect, and then it becomes a committee issue.
right.
I mean, a whole committee issue discussion.
Yeah. Maybe Tammy, could you do me a favor? Maybe can you draft an email and send it out to the whole group and for folks that aren't here?
Certainly.
And some folks, you know, maybe whatever aren't able to still be on right now. And just see who wants to be on it, and we'll get that committee going now so that we can be in a good spot by December to make some recommendations for next year. I think that was our plan the whole time. So
Yeah, and if we can do it before December, that would be great because our situation is so fluid. So I hate to say this, but with the economy, people are going to be possibly transferring job locations and stuff. We got to be ready. You know,
yes.
John bless his heart said that we were influential, and I have heard from others, not John Carter, who is prejudiced. Sorry, John, but P&Z.
I am prejudiced.
Yeah, Reston P&Z really is a cut above most other district, you know, planning and zoning committees. So we want to keep that because we want to keep Reston as a gem. So we don't. There's nothing magical about pulling new members in December. So if we get this going and we get candidates, we can vote on it, but I would recommend that we not dilly-dally. I'm getting old too, you know, it's,
Sure.
Yeah.
We all are.
Yeah.
Every day we get a little older.
Like the Willer
Yeah, right. Exactly. Could you, like I said, would you mind just sending out an email later? We'll just make sure we get anyone who is interested.
Yes.
And I'm happy to jump in there too. And then, thank you for that. And then, you could talk about it during the next meeting, which I will not be at, and then at least get that process going through the course of the summer. And Mark, will need a little help from you, just advertising and whatnot, if you don't mind.
Sure, no problem.
I think you did that last time too. Cool. Anything else?
Thank you for all the work you do. I appreciate it. Sending out agendas and so on.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Happy to serve the community and the P&Z. It's important. All the work that we're all doing is really important, as John said. So, thank you, Tammy, and thank you for everything you do too. All right. Well, I'll make a motion on that point to adjourn.
Second.
All right. I have a second. Anyone opposed? All right. I'll assume everyone's in favor. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. I will see you all in June, and good luck in May.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Have to leave.